dismantling of the federal government. On one hand, we have the 7 U.S. attorney staffers who resigned in protest. On the other hand, we have people discussing whether or not we should all be Cheryl Crow and dumped.
Forcibly took. European leaders are dismayed as the Trump administration draws closer to Russian President Vladimir Putin. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports there is fear a U.S.-brokered peace in Ukraine won't prevent Russia from continuing its war in the future.
Europe facing the Trump-Putin axis, read the headline of newspaper Le Monde as talks between U.S. and Russian officials got underway in Saudi Arabia without the Europeans. Former French NATO allied commander Jean-Paul Paloméros told BFM television it will take a while for Europe to rev up its military production, but in the meantime, it must support Ukraine with what it has.
Si Putin gagne,
if Putin wins, he said, Europe will continue to live under this threat and terror, and it will slow all the progress and integration we've achieved in Europe since 1949. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
A federal judge has temporarily paused the Trump administration's plan to slash funding from the National Institutes of Health. Areas that depend on health research for their economies are very concerned. Stephen Bisaha of the Gulf States Newsroom says one of the top recipients of NIH funding is the University of Alabama at Birmingham.
Biomedical research basically saved Birmingham's economy after the steel industry collapsed in the 70s and 80s. Economists warned that losing that funding could ripple across Alabama. UAB says life-saving research into things like cancer, Alzheimer's, and heart disease are in jeopardy. A federal judge has temporarily paused those cuts while lawsuits work their way through the courts.
Stephen Bisaha reporting. A key civil rights organization is urging Black Americans to choose not to support businesses that are ending commitments to diverse, equitable, and inclusive workplaces and opportunities. NPR's Kristen Wright has more.
In recent months, a wave of big corporations like Walmart, McDonald's, and Meta decided to end DEI policies, citing a shift toward belonging for all and legal concerns. The NAACP is requesting Black Americans not to spend money at those businesses. The civil rights group issued the Black Consumer Advisory, saying the rollbacks erode progress in creating an equitable society. It's calling on Black Americans to support businesses upholding their DEI commitments, as well as Black-owned businesses. President Trump ended DEI and accessibility programs in the federal government on Inauguration Day. Kristen Wright, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Herb Chambers has sold his New England auto dealership chain for $1.34 billion to the Georgia-based Asbury Automotive Group. The sale, announced today, is expected to close later this year. It includes 33 dealerships, 52 franchises, and 3 collision centers in Massachusetts and Rhode Island. Globe reports that the 83-year-old Chambers isn't going far. He's becoming a special advisor to Asbury, and he's keeping his Mercedes-Benz of Boston dealership that's located in Somerville. Chambers grew up in Dorchester. Some 500 people packed into the First Church of Northampton on Saturday morning, not for Mass and certainly not for bingo. The crowd was there for a coffee hour with State Rep Jim McGovern, where they shared their feelings on the current state of national politics. One person in the audience shouted, "When are the Democrats going to stop showing up with knives to a gunfight?" Another frustrated audience member told McGovern, "A lot of us don't think you're trying to win." And yet another voiced criticism that Governor Maura Healey hasn't done enough to protect undocumented immigrants from deportation. The comments garnered lots of applause as the event rolled into the 2-hour mark. In sports, the good news, the Team USA hockey team is on its way to the finals. The 4 nations face off against Canada, and the game is at the TD Garden Thursday night. The bad news is that Team USA and Bruins defenseman Charlie McAvoy was admitted to the hospital yesterday with a shoulder injury. He may not play on Thursday. 20 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. This is NPR.
The
Houston Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Tomorrow, comedian Nikki Glaser, you may have seen her hosting the Golden Globes. She's going to call in ahead of a bunch of shows at the Wang Theater. It's going to be really fun.
Forget the Golden Globes. Did you hear her on the Tom Brady roast?
Oh, the Tom Brady.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to repeat most of that.
I missed the Tom Brady roast, but I heard it was X-rated, Jim. That's what I heard.
She is fabulous. She's really great. She'll be joining us at noon. Right now, we're starting another week with a list of the things Trump's administration has done while we were off for a few days. Massive cuts to federal agencies are being referred to as the Valentine's Day massacres, affecting employees across nearly every agency, including the very non-political job of researching cancer cures, according to the Washington Post. Musk's government efficiency raters are seeking access to the financial information of just about every taxpayer, business, and nonprofit at the IRS. And of course, shakeup at the Justice Department as the government moves to drop the criminal indictment of New York City's Mayor Eric Adams, not because of any legal consideration, because Trump wants him to work on mass deportation with him. In response, 7 high-level prosecutors resigned. I'm just going to read from one of their resignation letters. This is to the acting Attorney General of the United States. This is the quote of the year. I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion to dismiss this case. But it was never going to be me.
I love it.
That's unbelievable. So
From
that's
a conservative guy.
I know. He clerked, you said, for Roberts and Kavanaugh, right?
Roberts and Kavanaugh, that's right.
So
and a decorated Iraq War veteran.
That is strength. And on the other hand, all the rest of us are discussing whether or not Tesla owners, including me, should sell our cars. So we want to know what separates those who have the strength and conviction to do what those 7 U.S. attorneys did. Oh, by the way, and 4 deputy mayors who worked for Adams in New York City resigned over the weekend, too. What separates them with that kind of strength from the rest of us who are debating whether we should all be just like Sheryl Crow? Our number is 877-301-8970. Crow, by the way, sold her Tesla and is going to donate all of the proceeds to NPR.
Let me say, Jim, I would be the first in line if I owned a Tesla to make the supreme sacrifice and get rid of my car.
You know why that is? Because you don't own a Tesla.
Because I don't own a Tesla. That is exactly that. But, on the other hand, we could all quit X, and that would be something. That would be a smaller thing. You do, of course, have a Tesla, as we know. So what is your plan moving forward?
How much you offer me for it? Why don't we ask? Why don't we ask listeners if they think I should sell my Tesla? I'll say again, I bought it before Elon Musk did what he's doing with the federal government. Nevertheless, if it's good enough for Sheryl Crow, why should it not be good enough for me? And you're going to play what she said?
I am going to play what she said, but you may risk being confronted on the road. There was the guy that talked about being yelled at and slurs when he was riding around one of those gold Tesla trucks. You know what I mean, Jim?
Well, those cyber trucks are
they'd have to get close to you to realize, I guess, it was the Tesla. But you could be risking yourself in some parking lot somewhere. Anyway, here is Sheryl Crow. You remember Sheryl Crow? Sheryl Crow's a great singer, obviously, but she also was the person that was advocating all across America that we should use one sheet of toilet paper. One square of toilet paper in order to save the planet. I don't know how well that worked. I think that was before or after she was dating Lance
Armstrong. That's for very small people, by the way. Go ahead.
Very small people. So I don't know where she is on the toilet paper now, but here she is responding to fans on Instagram after news about her selling her Tesla to help keep National Public Radio, and believe me, we are grateful, alive through the Trump administration.
That is where I get my news, as well as PBS, places that I feel I can count on that are not based on algorithms. Not everybody's going to be able to donate a Tesla, but if you're looking for something to do to make sure that your voice is heard, I'm going to post a bunch of resources on here. So go on, call your representatives, let them know how you feel. I feel like people are getting desensitized or completely freaked out and feel like they're helpless. You don't have to feel that way. Just call your representative and tell them how you feel. It's part two of voting.
Yeah, again, and I congratulate her for doing this. And she said she can afford to do it. Some people can't afford to do it. But the fact that that is a debate about what should happen at the same time that there are people like those 7 employees of the U.S. Attorney's Office, including that Sassoon woman who was the head U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, the 4 deputy mayors out of 8 resign from Eric Adams' staff in New York City. That's strength and standing up to these atrocities that are being committed in the name of small d democracy by the Trump administration. And again, the rest of us, a couple of people, and congratulations to them, went to a rally over the weekend. I think there were 1,000.
About 1,000 people. And it was very cold yesterday, too, to be out in Boston Common at a rally.
Did you go to Obama's inauguration?
I did.
It was really cold that day,
wasn't it? It was very cold.
There were only like 300,000 people there for that, if I remember correctly.
Right.
So,
that's
I mean,
true.
you do what you got to do. And by the way,
do.
we're not holding ourselves up, particularly me, since Marjorie's going to attack me for the whole segment about my Tesla. But you know what, by the way, you know what they're doing? Some people are disfiguring Teslas, I should say, for...
I know.
And so that may be a risk.
You better watch out. Oh, we have a texter, Jim, who says you should keep the Tesla. It's a beautiful car.
Well, that's a hell of a reason. 877-301-8970. Why are some people able and willing to sacrifice their livelihoods and more because they won't do an unprincipled act? And by the way, the act, if I wasn't clear, was dismissing the charges against Eric Adams there. By the way, we're going to discuss this with John King in the 1 o'clock hour. Apparently, federal judges have no power to refuse a request by a prosecutor to drop charges, but he could do it and just get overturned on appeal. So the question is, will the judge in this case have the courage to do the same thing the U.S. attorneys are and just say no? That, I think, is going to come tomorrow.
And we should point out that all of these people do have a target on their back. I mean, these lower court judges, these upper court judges, even the Supreme Court, as we know, someone was lurking outside Justice Kavanaugh's house with malicious intentions. So they all have, they're all risking something by doing this. And this woman, we didn't mention her, but Danielle Sassoon, she's the Manhattan prosecutor.
U.S. attorney.
A U.S. attorney, excuse
yes.
me. But she's in Manhattan, and she resigned as well, and she's another conservative. She clerked for Antonin Scalia, the late Supreme Court Justice, who was a very conservative guy, and she's a member of the Federalist Society, which is where a lot of these extremely conservative justices come from. So this is not a Democratic thing. These two people, this guy Scotton, the former lead prosecutor in the Adams case, the Iraqi war veteran, Harvard Law School graduate, again, Roberts and Kavanaugh were the justices he
Can I read
for.
his quote one more time before we take some calls? 877-301-8970. He sent this to the acting U.S. attorney, Beauvais, who used to be Trump's lawyer, is now I guess he's the number 2 at the Justice Department with Pam Bondi becoming the Attorney General. He writes to him saying, I'm not going to file the motion to dismiss the case against Adams. If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion. But it was never going to be me. I'll tell you, I wish I had the strength.
And they had a long
that this Scotton guy does.
They had a long discussion among the other prosecutors about whether they were going to file the motion or not. And I guess the guy that finally signed it was a veteran prosecutor, but his motivation, according to this story from the Washington Post, is that he wanted to save other people's jobs by doing it.
Yeah, but you know what he did? He sold his Tesla. So it's okay. 877-301-8970. We want to know what separates the strong from the meek when it comes to resistance. And by the way, we're not talking about people who love what Trump's doing. Obviously, you should do nothing. But for those who are appalled by what Trump is doing, there are some people showing strength and some debating Teslas.
Just one last thing.
Yeah.
Anand Garrett, we have him on a lot on the show. Yeah. He's a very smart, progressive writer. He's written a lot of books about the country and everything else. He's got a great essay that we got from our colleague Zoe this morning, where he questioned whether we can be the land of the free if we're no longer the home of the brave. And he says, what we're proving right now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is that we are not the home of the brave. We are a country full of people smilingly capitulating to a tyrant.
Another great line. And as Aid just told me, he's on next Monday, which is great. 877-301-8970. Jacoby in East Boston, you were first on Boston Public Radio. Thanks for joining us. Hi.
Hey.
Hi.
So, I have a question. Maybe you should sell your Tesla because maybe the autopilot will backfire.
So, Jacoby, before I respond, how old are you, Jacoby?
11.
And are you on spring break this week?
Kinda.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jacoby, you think I should get rid of my Tesla? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have to say, I wasn't
Okay.
seriously thinking about it, but now that you've suggested it, I'm going to take it more seriously.
Jacoby, I just have a question for you. Have you ever ridden in a Tesla?
No.
Oh. Well, maybe I'll give you a ride if I don't sell
Yeah,
it.
Jim could give you a ride.
Hey,
A lot of
Jacoby.
people really like him.
Enjoy the week, and I'm really glad you called, and we'll take your thoughts seriously. Thank you much. That's just Jacoby in East Boston. 877-301-8097. We are huge with 11-year-olds,
Hey, I hope
by
we
the
get
way.
some. I hope we get some more kids during spring break.
break.
A lot of them are stuck in the house because it's so cold today. Anyway, 877-301-8970. What do you think about our response to everything that is going on? And should Jim sell his Tesla, which I, of course, would have done already were I
You
the
are
owner
so full of
a
it.
Tesla. Boy, I did drive an electric car over the weekend. It was one of my
You're in
son-in-laws.
love, right?
Oh my God! Yeah, it's the Hyundai Ioniq, I think it was called.
Yeah.
It is not a Tesla, Jim, but it rides really well.
That's
Chris
good
in
to hear.
Hudson, thank you for calling.
Hey, Chris.
Hey, how's it going, Jim? I'd like to say that you are neither a fool nor a coward if you decide not to sell your Tesla.
Thank you.
I actually saw a sticker over the weekend that said, "Here for the zero emissions, not for the Elon Musk."
That's good.
That's a good one.
That's good, yeah.
That's a good one. Well, Chris, I want you to respond to an anonymous texter. I can't do anything huge, but I agree with Sheryl Crow that, quote, you are who you hang out with, and have basically cut ties with anyone who supports this cruel administration. How do you respond to that texter, Chris?
I could definitely see some truth to that, but at the same time, I still think that there's some room to help educate and bring some folks back from the brink of total despair and isolation. I mean, we just had an event canceled in my hometown where some J6 insurrectionists were supposed to speak, and it just took a couple of weeks of significant pressure to get the impact that we were hoping for and keep those domestic terrorists out of our town.
Hey,
wow.
Chris, before you go...
Is it
I'm
Hudson?
sorry.
Was it Hudson, Chris?
Hudson, Massachusetts, yeah, we had an event scheduled on Main Street where
Wow.
two J6ers were booked by a local Republican
Good
group.
for you.
Wow,
to
good
talk
for
about
you.
regale them with their tales.
You know, before you go away, since you've thought about this, we haven't mentioned that Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. We haven't mentioned that. The Washington Post had accepted an ad from Common Cause, 2 full pages, trashing the role of Elon Musk, and then it was rejected. And the conventional wisdom to which I subscribe is because Bezos didn't want to upset Donald Trump. I subscribe to the Washington Post and I use Amazon. That's not quite as big a deal to dump both of those as it is to dump a car. What do you think in response to Bezos' behavior people should do, like me, Chris?
Honestly, I think it'd be a drop in the bucket, to your point, and it really wouldn't make much of an impact if we were to try to revolt against the Amazon movement in the country. But at the same time, I think just keeping an eye out locally and being a listening ear and being comfortable having the tough conversations is probably going to be a greater impact than not having an auto delivery of your dog food every 30 days.
Hey, Chris, excellent call. Thank you very much. You know, when Chris says, I'm not sure you'd have an individual impact, when the original editorial in the Washington Post was endorsing Harris was canceled by Bezos, 250,000 people at least joined together to cancel their subscription to what I used to feel was one of the best, if not the best paper in America. So you're probably not alone, and I really don't know what the right thing to do is.
Yeah, there was a big debate about that because the Washington Post has done some great reporting about the malfeasances in the Trump administration. So that was the question: do you take it out in the journalism there? Because the owner is doing a bad thing and the publisher's doing a bad thing. It's a debate. But listen to this one. This is from John and Ashland. My 4-year-old admired the Tesla robot thing at the Natick Mall. I told him a very bad, no good man who may cost daddy his job since I do medical research at Harvard Medical owns that store.
Well, that's a
And
good
that was
message.
That was the end of the discussion. There is a big fear about medical research, cancer research, between all these cuts in health workers and, RFK Jr. coming in to take over our health care. God help us.
Did you see 60 Minutes last night?
I did.
Did you see the USAID person talking about being ready to pay? Could you describe? I only saw a clip of it.
Well, this woman who talked about getting thrown out of there with minutes to go and not knowing whether they were going to have their health insurance, not knowing where their next paycheck was going to come from. That was the other thing that she emphasized, the cruelty of it. Not saying, you got 2 months severance, or you've got 3 months to get your life in order, or not even 2 weeks. It was get out of there immediately. And she talked about how these people, the kind of work they're doing, it's not a criminal enterprise. No one denies that there's waste and fraud.
Like there is in every single program that government runs.
But you always find out when people are talking about coming in and running the government like they run a business, it doesn't translate. You can't run the government like you run a business. And I think that sooner or later we're going to find that out, but I'm worried it's going to be too late, and we're really going to be hurt.
You know what stuck with me over the weekend? Your comment last week, I think it was in the context of USAID, where average workers and some of the poorest people in the world benefit, is the richest man on the planet is essentially directing pain at ordinary, hardworking government employees and at people in other lands who are total poorest of people, who are dependent
on Earth
on the generosity of the American taxpayer. And it's the juxtaposition is incredible.
I keep waiting, since so many of these people are claiming to be Christian nationalists, for the real Christian type people to band together and say something about this, and maybe that'll happen. I don't know. Mitchell from his Tesla.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Mitchell.
Hi, Mitchell. Welcome.
Hello. I'm calling for my Tesla to tell you, do not sell a Tesla.
Why?
I bought mine in 2018, long before we knew anything, of course, and it's the best car that I've ever had. I'm not selling it. It's 6.5 years old, 100,000 plus miles, drives like a dream. It's paid off. Why would I sell it and get something worse that I then have to have a whole new car payment on when it wouldn't accomplish anything? Somebody else would drive it instead.
Okay, Mitchell, I accept that. I mean, I hear you. Do you shop on Amazon?
Yeah, that's a harder one.
Yeah, that is. I agree. I love your candor. That is totally true.
Yeah.
The answer is it's a little less convenient, and it may cost another $1 or $2 to shop somewhere else. And let's see how many of us have the backbone, including me, to say no more Amazon if Jeff Bezos is going to censor what the newspaper he owns says about Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Mitchell, I'm glad you called. Thanks so much for your call. We got to take a break, Marjorie.
If you sell your Tesla to someone who really wants one, you're only strengthening the wrong people. Donate to someone who has no car, says Ryan from Wales.
I have already checked. I was going to send it to a January 6th hostage, who's no longer a hostage, and I figure that would be okay.
And listen to this one. We bought our Tesla years ago before Musk went insane. It's already paid for, and we love it, so there's no point in getting rid of it. Instead, we bought stickers that say Elon sucks and anti-Elon Tesla Club.
Before you take a break, can I just say one more thing? CNN now is showing images from Saudi Arabia where the American government and Putin's government are meeting to negotiate the fate of a country trying to protect its democracy, which is not even allowed to attend. I mean, it is really incredible what is happening every single day. Ukraine is not part of this discussion. It's scandalous.
Okay, you're listening to Boston Public Radio live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're talking about whether we're just all bending down to a tyrant, but most important, whether Jim
should sell his Tesla.
Sell his Tesla. 877-301-8970.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, how to recognize Black History Month amid President Trump's attacks on diversity initiatives inside and outside federal government programs. Is it an act of defiance, an act of resilience? Imari Paris-Jeffries, president and CEO of Embrace Boston, joins us for his take on what it means to honor Black History Month in this political environment. That and more on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And MIT Federal Credit Union, helping members achieve their financial goals with savings account options, including high-yield money market accounts. Memberships open to the general public. More at MIT-FCU, federally insured by NCUA. And Direct Tire and Auto Service, offering a full range of services including brakes, shocks, diagnostics, and oil changes. Direct Tire and Auto Service, not just service, customer service. DirectTire.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan and Jim Browdy. We're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're here tomorrow and Friday. We're on one hand talking about the courage of 7 members of the U.S. Attorney's Office who refused to file the motion to dismiss the corruption and fraud charges against the mayor of New York City and the 4 deputy mayors in New York City who also resigned. The ultimate courage versus the debate that's happening in America after Sheryl Crow sold her Tesla and is donating to NPR. Should those of us who own Teslas be doing that? And by the way, while I think that is a totally fair discussion to be had, even though I'm the sufferer in this conversation,
You are.
It is incredible that that is seen as an act of courage
That's
when
right.
you put it up against these 11 people who sacrificed their livelihoods.
Yep.
To do the right thing. 877-301-8970.
And let's read that quote one more time from Hagan Scutton, the assistant district.
Best quote.
Assistant United States attorney from the Southern District of New York, who, by the way, is a decorated Iraq War veteran and a conservative who clerked for Chief Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh. He said, when he was asked to get rid of these charges against the mayor of New York City, he said, if no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give the president that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me.
My call screen is all screwed up. Can you take the next call?
Now, from the sublime to the ridiculous, Jim,
Yeah.
a texter has a good idea.
What is it?
They know that you're attached to your Tesla, and they don't think you should really have to sell the
I
Tesla.
haven't made a decision
But
yet.
they're suggesting that instead you could donate your extensive Dickie collection to a shelter. And another texter has a good point that this might be the time to sell the Tesla because their values may go down a lot.
Their values have gone down
Yep.
a lot. 877-301-8970. We're talking about strength versus meekness in the eye of actions that a lot of people, maybe half the population, finds to be oppressive. I can't do the call screen.
Yeah, I can't read it either. But
Can you tell us on our
I think
air who
it's
the next
number
caller
4.
is? Brenda, wherever you are, welcome to the show. Hi, Brenda.
Hey, how are you?
We're good.
So I had 2 points. The first one is that I went to the protest in Boston yesterday.
Oh, great.
And there were a lot of people there, a lot of energetic people,
Great.
a lot of signs. What was missing was leadership. There were no speeches. There was a wonderful couple of people who started singing. They were standing up on the top of the steps. They got us singing. But there was nothing organized.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of brings me to my second point. And I don't remember the quote exactly, but it's that to those who are given, who have more is expected.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't own a Tesla because I can't afford a Tesla,
Mm-hmm.
but if I gave up a Tesla, it would mean nothing. If you give up a Tesla, you have a public voice. So it would make a difference, like it's making a difference with Sheryl Crow. And if people like you guys, and I'm saying you guys, I don't even know what your rules are, but we need public people running things like protests. We are trying our darndest. I call somebody every single day in public office. I will go to the protest. I will do what I can, but I'm just one little person, you know?
Yeah.
We need people who have a voice and who have the ability to make a big deal. Those people that are giving up their job, they have those jobs. That's why they're giving them up. You know, they unfortunately are being put in this position, but they have the ability to do something that's a big public statement.
Hey, Brenda, can I tell you 2 things? One, that was an extraordinarily moving call. 2, and I mean this sincerely, I will take this much more seriously because of what you said. And 3, there are some people who have bravely stood up in terms of our leaders. I know they may not have been there yesterday. people like Markey and Warren
Markey's
and Presley
not stopped talking.
have been relentless. They may not have been there yesterday. They've been, the front of many a protest and action and press availability. And I think they've done, at least in my opinion, what leadership is all about. Brenda, call us again, please, and thank you for your call. It was great.
But I think the Democrats are in search of somebody that's young, charismatic, and can really pull it off. I mean, it's not easy.
Ayanna Pressley is young and charismatic.
Yep, she is, and so is AOC. She's a lot more popular with young people than older people, but I think she's pretty impressive.
I think the answer is everybody should stand up wherever they can in whatever way they can. And the one thing I should have said this to Brenda, with which I disagree, is, well, obviously she doesn't have a high profile. It's people like Brenda who are deciding to make whatever side, to go to the thing yesterday, whatever else she is doing. As I say, you add those up, a la the 250,000 people, and I think it was ultimately more, who decided not coordinating with each other, individual action, to cancel the subscription to the Washington Post because they're offended that Bezos censored the endorsement of Kamala Harris. 877-301-8970. Here's an anonymous. I have not shopped on Amazon for years because of their safety record with employees. 3 things in a decade I've ordered from there. America, yes, you can. It's not good enough to think that you are addicted to Amazon. Get a life, be brave, get a backbone. That's another challenge.
Yeah, that is another challenge, and that's a good one. Here's one that talks about the words of the national anthem, land of the free and home of the brave. This texter has changed it to, we are now the land of the knee and the home of the naive.
Well, that's actually, sadly, I think, in most cases, not all, fairly true. 877-301-8970. Where are we going next, Braden?
Yeah, confusion with the call screen. Are we going to Tamara? Is that where we're going? I don't know where we're going.
We need help, Braden.
Oh, we're going to Ruth. Ruth
in Mattapoisett. Hi.
Hi, Ruth.
Hi, how are you?
We're good. Thank you for calling. What's that?
I think we're missing the point on why most of us drive Teslas.
Why?
And that is because we're trying to fight climate change.
Well, I can respond. Wait, before you go ahead, let me just say, Marjorie was fighting climate change driving her son-in-law's car this weekend, which is also electric, which is not a Tesla. So you can fight climate.
That's true.
Okay, but go ahead.
That's true. My husband and I, who are retired, have been driving Teslas since 2018. Mm-hmm. We have 48 solar panels and 3 Tesla batteries.
Wow.
So we are contributing a lot to the grid.
Good for you.
That's great.
We don't think you should get rid of your Tesla. They're the best electric car out there. We've been from Madawaska, Maine, down all the way to Florida and out to the Mississippi. No problems. What we've done is we have put on a bumper sticker that says, "Stop climate change," and F Elon.
Oh, I think you said it all there. Hey, I'm sorry. Is it Brenda? I hope. Did I get that right? Or is that?
No, it's Ruth.
Ruth, I'm so sorry.
Ruth.
Ruth from Mattapoisett. Thank you for the call. Excellent bumper sticker. Send me one. 877-301-8970.
Listen to this. My daughter was targeted while driving my wife's Subaru in New Hampshire with a Biden-Harris bumper sticker on it. Fortunately, it didn't escalate into full-grown road rage, but it was pretty frightening. I would never condone violence. If my shopping cart, on the other hand, happened to scratch a Tesla in the parking lot, I wouldn't really lose too much sleep over it.
Yeah.
Okay.
877-301-8970. We have time to squeeze one more in, and that would be Leanne, and another one in a Tesla. Hi, Leanne. Where are you on this?
Well, I'm with what sounds like everybody, right? It's a great car. I bought it in 2019 to help stop climate change. But here's the thing. We're all looking at these small little ways to hurt Elon Musk. We're never going to be able to hurt him financially. I think if we all, for all these different pieces, looked at the primary objective and took our airtime, our strength, our money, and focused on helping flip the House and the Senate next year. Forget all these small things that we're talking about, subscriptions and selling your car. Let's all focus on that, flip the House and the Senate to stop these lunatics, and then get young, I'm sorry, we have to do it, young white men from non-democratic states, national exposure, so we have good candidates for president down the line.
Yeah, I think you make a lot of good points. I'm not sure they have to be young white men from those states. They have to be leaders from those states. I understand what your concern is, but thank you for the call. And by the way, you can do more than one thing at once. You know, one of the and things are happening that I don't know if did you hear the NPR report this morning? There was this religious leader of a congregation talking about the terror that people are feeling who are Latino in this country, and even though objectively the mass deportation promised by this Homan macho guy and Donald Trump has not happened, it hasn't allayed the fear of people that it's going to happen. So it's here. It's not just down the line. It is here for a lot of people.
I want to give a plug to Stan Grossfeld in the Boston Globe.
What do you do?
He's got a wonderful picture essay about people who are here, came from Mexico, wherever they came from, in Chelsea.
Oh, I didn't see it.
Yeah, talking about the fear there, talking about people at soup kitchens and talking about kids in schools. It's a really good piece capturing exactly that. Anyway, you want to go out with a little Sheryl Crow sound? This is to celebrate Sheryl Crow selling her Tesla. Here is a little music to play on your next road trip in a vehicle not owned by Elon Musk.
Since World War II, most German political parties have sworn off cooperation with the far right, a norm that holds the memory of the Holocaust at its center.
And when we say never again, you have to know what is it never again. You cannot erase the history.
How Germany's changing political landscape could upend that norm next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts. BSU's skilled graduates are recruited by today's industry leaders, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Dregan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Nikki Glaser of Brady Roast fame and the Golden Globes, and she's a brilliant comic. Apart from that, will join us tomorrow at noon by phone. We're really looking forward to it. We're joined out at the library, though, by Trenni Casey. We're looking forward to that, too. She's an anchor and reporter for NBC Sports Boston and a BPR contributor. Hi, Trenni.
What synergy. I'm going to see Nikki Glaser
you
on
are?
Friday. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Little girls' night out.
At the Wilbur.
That's going to be great.
Oh, I cannot wait.
Nor can I.
So she was the best I've seen at the Golden Globes in like years.
Yes.
Yeah. She was really good.
She was the best at the Brady Roast, too.
Yes.
She was brilliant.
Yeah. Well, that was a little raunchy, as I understand.
Well, so
Just
that's what a roast is.
That's what a roast is.
That's what a roast is. That's right. Okay, let's go and
I didn't
start
know
with
Marjorie was such a prude.
She is.
That's right.
Not.
Okay, let's start with a little sound, depressing sound to a lot of us. This is at the Four Nations face-off in Montreal on Saturday night, a hockey game. Canadians booed the United States anthem. Here it is.
I hadn't heard that. That was pretty intense.
It went on during the whole anthem.
Well, it's not the first time.
Right.
It also happened at a Raptors game. I mean, listen, this is what happens when your leadership angers its allies, threatens to make it the 51st state, threatens tariffs that will irreparably harm their economy. I mean, this is, when we just were on vacation, my husband and I,
Where were you?
We went to Grenada for a week, so just Caribbean island, hung out. Thanks for noticing my tan, you guys.
I'd say we noticed you're red. I think it's a little bit fair to say. You look great.
Did you have to pretend you were Canadians when you went to Grenada?
No, but someone actually, we were in, so there were a lot of Canadian and English travelers. And I did laugh. We were in a shuttle going from one property to another. There were multiple properties in this group. And the woman said, "Oh, are you Canadian or American?" I said, "Oh, my God, thanks for not knowing the difference." I felt like I had accomplished everything I had tried in life. Like I didn't just come across as like an obnoxious American. And then on our last day there, we were in the same shuttle going to this other property again. And this couple was with us, and they are French-Canadian. And I said, "We're American." She goes, "I have mixed feelings about Americans right now." And I said, "I have mixed feelings about Americans right now." So, we're all in the same boat together.
I've heard so many people mention that they, about going to Europe with their kids doing the semester abroad, that they're really worried about.
I mean, in fairness, this has been a thing. Like, this has been, if you are an American who's traveled abroad over really the last 20, 30 years, like I remember going to Amsterdam, Paris, and Rome on my first ever trip to Europe in my 20s, and seeing Americans with Canadian flags sewed to their backpacks.
That was the Iraq War.
The Iraq War. Like, there's always been this sort of...
But it changed during Obama a lot.
It did change for a while during Obama. We were certainly more accepted as Americans, but we're kind of back at that place where we were 20 or so years ago.
Also about Grenada. How do you say it? Grenada or Grenada?
Grenada.
In terms of Grenada, didn't we invade Grenada under Ronald Reagan?
They did tell me, though, that they don't hate Ronald Reagan, that they actually, one of our drivers said they are actually grateful for the invasion because it saved them.
Cubans out?
It kept the Cubans
out.
out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Saved them from communism.
Okay, what were we talking about?
Just a very quick
well, they're
story.
booing the national anthem.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Remember that movie American Sniper starring Bradley, whatever his name is?
Bradley Cooper?
Yeah, he was the American sniper. It was all about Iraq.
Yeah.
I've told the story to Jim, but I went over, one of my kids did the semester abroad, and she was in Paris, and she was sick, so I was over staying with her. So I decided, let's go to the movies, just get out of the apartment for a while. So we went to the movie, bad choice, American Sniper, in the middle of downtown Paris, and it was packed. There was not a seat in the place, and we had to walk to the front row, and it was obvious, I guess, to these people that we were Americans and not Parisians, and it was like the walk of shame from the back to the front row. There we were, invading the wrong country with Bradley Cooper shooting women and children as the American Sniper. It was so humiliating.
I know. It's so, but I guess I'm not surprised that Canada did this. I mean, listen, we are not loved universally right now. I mean,
we are not.
I think there are a lot of countries, whether it's Germany, whether it's Canada, whether it's Mexico. I mean, now the Mexican president, I mean, this is obviously not sports related, but now she wants to sue about changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America.
Scheinbaum, we love her.
Yeah, we love her, but she's pushing back. But this is the environment I think people have to understand. And I would say they're not booing everybody. They're booing what we are doing, similar to, like, I liken it to, one, they have every right. If an athlete is on the court and they are not playing up to their potential, what do? You boo them.
Yeah.
That's what you do. When somebody does something that is not helping your team, you boo, and that's what the Canadians are doing.
So this was at this, whatever it's called, Four
Nations. It's actually been really wildly successful.
Before you talk about how I drove by, speaking of successful, Mayor Wu the other day mentioned they're having this thing at government at City Hall Plaza. I drove by, it was like 400 degrees below zero yesterday. The place is packed to the gills, packed to the gills. Now, this what is it called? Four Nations. Sweden, Finland, United States, Canada. U.S. beat Canada the other day. 3 fights in the first 9 seconds.
Yeah.
The final, U.S. versus Canada, is Thursday night right here in Boston. Yes. But this is while it's exciting because any U.S.-Canada hockey thing, it's made up. It's like a creation.
So they're doing this in lieu of the All-Star game.
Oh.
So usually this time would be the All-Star break for the NHL, and normally you would just have skills competitions and like a stupid game that nobody watches. But what they're doing is NHL players are returning to the Olympics next year for the first time since 2012 in Sochi. So what they're doing is basically giving the teams back-to-back years of 2 full weeks off of games, sort of in preparation to figure out how to plan.
Oh, well, that's interesting.
And then, but also within it to sort of drum up interest and say, hey, this is an appetizer for what you're going to see in the Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina next year. So we're going to have, 4 of the strongest hockey nations play in this smaller tournament that is somewhat, similar to what you'll see in the Olympics next year. And it's been, listen, it has not disappointed. The U.S.-Canada game, obviously the best game. The United States yesterday, I think, played Sweden. That one was a little less competitive. They lost, but like Matthew Tkachuk didn't play. Neither did Charlie McAvoy. Charlie McAvoy, who's a Bruins defenseman, is out. He went to the hospital, like an upper body injury, so he's not going to play in the finals. But the finals will be USA-Canada, which should be a really great game.
You say it's in lieu of the Hockey All-Star Game, which I have to admit I never saw. Everybody who knows anything about the NBA is trashing the All-Star. What? That was this weekend. What was so horrible about it?
Well, it's been terrible for a while. So they keep trying all these different iterations of it. Like it used to be East versus West. So you would play Eastern All-Stars, Eastern Conference All-Stars against Western Conference All-Stars. It'd be a little bit like an NBA Finals, but instead of specific teams, it were the best players from every team. Well, that, for whatever reason, it became a joke, right? Like guys wouldn't play. The scores, there was no defense being played. It'd be like 150 to 175. It was just sort of a joke game. So they've been trying the last couple of years, all these different iterations. And this year they tried 4 like sub-teams. And it was the first team to 40 would win. It was sort of like a round robin. So you'd play like semifinal games and then you'd play finals games. And I'm going to be full disclosure, I didn't watch it. I didn't watch it because, one, it was on at 8 o'clock at night. I went to bed on Sunday at like 8:30. It didn't tip off.
You didn't watch the SNL 50th anniversary?
No, I was tired, Jim.
Oh, my God. It was unbelievable.
I saw the beginning.
I should have DVR'd it. Like, that was silly. I DVR'd White Lotus.
Oh.
Because White Lotus, don't
just
tell
started.
me. La, la, la,
I'm not going
la.
to tell you. It just started.
I watched the beginning
Season
of the
3.
NBA game before I realized it was the All-Star game, and I thought, what the hell is this? It was like the Super Bowl at the beginning. It was crazy.
Yeah, and so but the complaints are that, like, again, that it was like older players versus rising stars. So you had guys who probably deserved to be there who weren't there. And then you had this weird, it wasn't even the games. I guess some of the games were competitive, but then they had all these intermissions, including a 15-minute like halftime intermission where they honored the Inside the NBA crew. Because
is that Barkley
for
and
those, yes, for those of
Shaquille?
you who don't keep up with like what's going on in media.
They're great.
Well, they're not going to be all together
it's their last time,
it's
right?
their last time because the NBA, the TNT, did not make a large enough offer to keep the NBA. So now next year, the rights of the NBA will be ESPN, my, full disclosure, my station, NBC, and then Amazon. And so, but I'm like, they didn't die. Like all 4 of these guys are, and Candace Parker, they're just going to be on like another network in a different iteration. Like it was like they were like memorializing that. And I understand Inside the NBA is an iconic show. It constantly wins like big, national Emmys and stuff. But I'm like, for goodness gracious sake, they're all still going to make tens of millions, or at least millions of dollars on another network. Like, pour one out for the Inside
I
the
agree
NBA.
with you, but they are pretty great. Can we talk
But all
about?
in all, it was a bad product. So now they're talking next year. Some things that have been floated around is that they'll start earlier. I think this for sure will happen because NBC has the All-Star Game next year, and it's going to be during the Olympics. So the thought process is they'll start the All-Star Game, whatever it is, at 5 p.m. on a Sunday, and it will be it'll be like after live Olympic coverage from Italy, and then before their prime time coverage at night. And one of the things floated out was that you would do a one-on-one. You would have like one-on-one battles, and then the winner of the one-on-one battles, they'd probably play sort of pool play, would win $1 million.
Yeah, the only thing I watched last year, not this year, the only thing that was spectacular, which they didn't repeat, was Steph Curry doing a three-point thing. What's it? Ionesco,
yeah.
That was spectacular. I mean, you didn't think so?
It was great.
I loved
but
it.
Also,
why isn't it Caitlin Clark against Steph Curry?
That's why I don't, or even another player. Like have it every year. After a while, if you have the same players, right, it kind of becomes repetitive. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know who's in charge of those things. But you could, if you're going to pay them $10 million, you could pay me $9.5, and I come up with better ideas.
8-7. We're not taking calls. Can I bring up switch sports to baseball? I have a question unrelated to baseball about a baseball thing.
Okay.
John Henry has been trashed for years, really, even though he won 4 world championships after 80-some years, because they're not spending as much money as they used to.
Jim?
They finally, over the weekend, signed a guy, this Bregman guy, 3 years, $120 million, $40 million a year. We can talk about that if you want, particularly the reaction to the guy he may bump out of his position. But when something like that, when there's a big financial splash from one team in a city like ours, is the trickle-over effect that people like Robert Kraft have to spend more money for a big splash on the Patriots than they have recently? You know what I mean?
No, because and quite honestly, like I know it sounds to the layperson like, whoa, $40 million a year. The contract is it's really a 1-year deal.
No, I didn't mean the merits. I meant it's getting huge play. That they spent a ton
it's getting huge play because they've done nothing. They've done nothing recently. They have spent no money on anyone. And so I think what's getting more play is I think people do feel like Alex Bregman can shore up their defense if they play him at third base, and if they move him out of position to second base, who knows what will happen. And I think people are just like, oh my God, they finally did something. I think that's why it's getting play. I mean, listen, the Patriots did it just a different way last year by drafting Drake May. The NBA is also, the NFL is a lot different than Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball doesn't have a hard cap. The NFL does.
On salaries.
So on salaries.
Yeah.
So your best players often don't make it to free agency in the NFL. They almost always make it to free agency in baseball because there is like Juan Soto. What did he sign? That $500 or $600? Oh, that's right. $750 million deal with the Dodgers. That the equivalent to that doesn't happen in football. So it's sort of apples to oranges. It doesn't really play.
Okay, forget that then.
Okay,
but I mean, I'm sure it's a question people wonder.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate your kindness.
So suddenly we seem like we're floating in soccer teams. There's a new men's soccer league.
Okay, this is the first I heard of this. Why? That
exactly
was when I
what we
read
said
that
this
article.
morning.
I was like, why? The I mean, with all due respect to MLS, and I know there's soccer fans out there, but it's already like on the worldwide stage, which soccer is. MLS is just sort of like I don't know, what would be the U.S. equivalent of it here?
Well, except as Messi, which obviously is huge.
You know what to me MLS is? MLS is like Canadian football, right?
Like Major League Soccer. That's
yes,
what that
Major League Soccer is the big, and now they're proposing, the reason we're talking about this is they're proposing USL Soccer, which I guess exists in some form, but they need at least 12 teams for it to be like a tier 1 professional. There's they're all below MLS now, but now they want to add a second. So what's
the point?
That's what I understand. MLS is not, it's popular in the cities it's in, kind of, but it's not like it doesn't even sniff the 4 other major sports we have in the United States. I don't understand why you would oversaturate a market that already, and does not get the best players. That's the other thing. Most of the best American players go to Europe to play on Premier League or La Liga or whatever it is in Spain, all their different, that's the highest level of soccer in the world. That's where the best players are going. You're getting again, to me, MLS is a little like Canadian football. If you can't make it in the NFL, you go to Canada to play football.
Well, I'm
assuming if you can't make it in the Premier League, you play in MLS. Or if you're at the end of your career and there's nothing left for you. To me, it feels like it's like a bad business deal.
So Messi, other than being spectacular when he was playing for Miami,
at the end. Yeah.
So that had no impact on soccer's numbers other than when he was playing?
Other than when he was playing, no. I mean, not that I can tell. It's not like we certainly didn't see stories about MLS and their ratings and merchandising and everything like we did say the trickle-down effect with women's basketball.
Because of
women's
Caitlin
basketball
Clark
because of Caitlin Clark. I feel like it got more popular across the board.
Apparently she wasn't interested in participating in an all-star game.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Contest. Yeah, our staff found that info for us. Thank you very much.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Well, maybe she was too busy hanging out with Taylor Swift.
Well, you know what the other thing is?
Has she been hanging out with Taylor Swift?
Yes, she was in she wasn't at the Super Bowl, but she was, I think, at the AFC Championship game with her.
Yeah, but can I say...
I did not know that.
Okay, I know that's all you want to talk about is Taylor Swift. The thing that's troubling about that, and I'm a huge Caitlin Clark fan.
Will Kelsey retire?
Oh, my God.
Is he going to retire?
He has till March.
He's 35.
Okay,
I think he has till March 14th.
Okay, good. As I was saying.
Will they get married?
The thing that troubles me about the All-Star game
How
and
big will the
Caitlin
ring
Clark
be?
is it seems like a lot of the biggest stars in basketball are afraid of losing. I mean, for example, the guy who won the dunk contest for the 3rd year in a row is a minor league basketball player. He's not even in the pros.
They can't get
because they don't want to lose.
Yeah, they can't get legit. Tell me, other than the only reason I even know Mac McClung was in the dunk contest is because he's won it now 3 years in a row, and he's like the only name that's there year after year. Last year, Jaylen Brown did it, I think, to kind of prove to everybody.
He didn't win either.
He didn't win, but I think he did it like he kind of took one for the team. Like, hey, I'm like one of the heads of the NBA union, players union. I'll show you guys this is still a great product. And even he was like, no, I'm not going back out there. They asked like Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think while he was there, if you would consider participating, and he was pretty non-committal on it. Like, I don't even know that it's that they don't want to lose. I think it would need to be. Like, to me, they should just make a rule. You have to be an all-star in order to compete in the dunk contest. And then it would be at least entertaining again.
I did not.
Okay,
but why don't they just get rid of the dunk contest?
Because it's fun when the big stars play.
Well, they're not playing.
Do you know what I proposed today in our work email? Get rid of all-star games altogether.
Yeah.
They're antiquated. The reason we had all-star games, like back when I was a kid or you guys were young, you had them because you did not.
When was that?
I mean,
Go ahead.
Think about it. But back when I was younger, you had like 3 television channels, maybe 4 or 5 if you had like, remember the old channels when it was like 4, 6, and 12 of your channels, and then you had like channel 24 or something.
Channel 2, let's not forget that.
Where you could go and you had like rabbit ears or maybe like one little box with it. There wasn't even cable yet. Of course you needed all-star games because you would never else see the best of the best. The only chance you would ever be able to see the best people play is if they played your team. And it was on television. Like, there weren't these vast packages of 160 games or 162 baseball games on TV or all 82.
Yeah, but you know what's good about them? Let me make the case.
Like,
even though the games
you
themselves,
can see the best players all the time
now.
now.
But seeing the best players who are usually in fierce competition playing on the same team, I like a lot. I mean, when you know that.
But the problem is they don't play.
They don't really play.
They
That's
don't
true.
really play.
Yeah.
Like, it's like about yuck with Kevin Hart making
Marjorie
jokes.
just wants to know about Taylor Swift
No,
and Kelsey.
well, I do. I'm very interested in that.
Yeah,
but
sure
I also
you are.
want to know if the reason they got booed was this dissatisfaction. So we have some sound of the Spurs, Chris Paul and Wemby receiving boos during the free throw competition. You want to play the sound?
No.
It's got 13
Who
seconds.
cares why they were booed?
Oh, they were
go
booed
ahead.
because they tried to
They
skirt
cheated.
over. They tried to cheat. They
Okay,
tried to
play
skirt
the
a
sound.
rule.
Go ahead.
I wonder if everyone is going to adopt this. Wait a minute. The crowd is unsettled. Yes. The rules are being shot to the very brink.
Okay, we have no idea what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
and Kevin Harlan is clearly tongue-in-cheeking it. Like, no one really cares that Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama broke the rules of a stupid skills competition. So the skills competition, basically, if you make 3-pointers, you can take time off or something. I don't know what it was. They were just trying to say.
get rid
Can I
of
ask you something? What does Taylor
See,
Swift
this is
think
all
about the skills competition? That's what Marjorie wants to know.
I don't know, but she got
Can
booed
you-
at the Super Bowl, and I felt bad for her. She's not done anything.
Why was she booed again?
Because people suck.
Yeah.
Honestly, is there any better explanation than that?
'Cause she
People are
was
just
in-
terrible, and they
didn't like Trump.
But
She
didn't
doesn't like
Serena
Trump, and he
Williams
was there.
support her in a tweet?
She did, of
That
course
was
she
pretty
did.
Thank
good.
goodness Serena supported her in the
Okay.
tweet. We were all concerned about it.
Okay, fine.
So glad I went on vacation. It made me so happy.
So can he be an announcer? Because Tom Brady probably is not going to last long as an announcer. We're almost out of time.
I mean, maybe
talking about?
Travis Kelce if
He's terrible.
They had the biggest audience for the Super Bowl in history.
Yeah, well,
I know.
I don't think it was
with
because
Tom Brady
yeah.
as the whatever.
I don't think it
Yeah,
was
but they didn't
because
tune in for
of
Tom Brady. They
Whatever.
thought people thought it was going to
Goodbye.
be a good game.
It was a great
Well,
game.
it was- oh,
A
congratulations.
Thank you very much. I played really hard.
You
Thank
did.
you.
It was
I
a
really
great job.
appreciate it.
Great
catch
Thank
in
you.
the end zone was
Thank you.
awesome.
I was
Leapt
exhausted after the
50
game, I have to
feet in the
admit,
air.
and bruised.
Okay, we're done here. We're
fine
speaking
now.
with Trenni Casey. We were anchor reporter for
it's
NBC
true.
Sports.
In Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And Johnson & Wales University. From computer science to public health, students can develop professional networks and industry experience alongside their classroom education. More at jwu.edu. Frontline investigates China's rule over Tibet. How they can...
And he's out with a piece today.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he is rescheduling a trip to Saudi Arabia, which hosted U.S.-Russia talks today. The bilateral meeting signaled a normalization of ties between Moscow and Washington. NPR's Joanna Kakissis reports from Kyiv that Zelensky says his country wants to be an equal partner in any negotiation to end Russia's nearly 3-year-old war on Ukraine.
Speaking to reporters in Istanbul during an official visit, Zelensky said Ukraine wants the war to end more than anyone, but with a fair deal. You can discuss whatever you want, Zelensky said, but you cannot make a decision about ending the war in Ukraine without Ukraine. He says Russia is pushing for Ukraine to decrease the size of its military and accept the loss of occupation.
It said it was surveying the damage done by the war. It said it was coordinating with United Nations peacekeepers. But on Monday, Israel said it will remain in 5 locations in southern Lebanon to protect communities in the north of Israel. Lebanese officials and Hezbollah said this violates the terms of the ceasefire, calling for Israel to withdraw completely. Lebanese President Joseph Aoun said that the ceasefire agreement, quote, must be respected and that Israel cannot be trusted. Hadil Al-Shalchi, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
The death toll in Kentucky after severe winter storms and flooding is at least 12 and expected to rise. The state's governor, Andy Beshear, describes what residents and emergency responders are up against.
We got about an inch this morning, which we did not expect, and we've got anywhere from 2 to 8 inches that are going to hit across the state. We've already been out there doing boat rescues in the middle of snowstorms, and this is going to further complicate it. We've got over 340 just state and federal roads that have mudslides or other issues with them, and now we're going to add that snow on top of it.
Kentucky Governor Beshear speaking with NPR's Morning Edition. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The flu is in full force across Massachusetts, with the CDC deeming flu severity to be very high. More than 11% of medical visits in the second week of February were flu-like symptoms. That's compared to only 2% during the same time last year. UMass Medical Center infectious disease specialist Dr. Sundeep Jubal says low vaccination rates among kids could be a factor.
This is a virus that spreads in closed congregate settings, and children going to school is a high-risk factor. So that's why vaccinating kids is also very important in decreasing the overall burden of infection and the number of cases.
Jubal says that only about 45% of kids across the U.S. have gotten the vaccine. We learned last week that the Massport Authority is seeking a big fee increase for rideshare trips to Logan Airport and new charges for cruise ship passengers as a way to generate more money for upgrades. And today we're learning about pushback from critics who say that the increase only adds to the state's affordability crisis or lack thereof. The Eagle Tribune reports that Massport's board of directors are set to consider a plan next month that would increase the $3.25 fee charged to rideshare apps for pickups and drop-offs at Logan, increasing it up to $5.50 in July and then $7.50 in July of 2027. High wind advisory still in effect until this afternoon. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, and we should say tomorrow at noon, Nikki Glaser, huge and brilliant comedian, her profile rose dramatically, not just with her HBO special last year, but she was the star of the Brady Roast, Tom Brady, and was the host of the Golden Globes, and I thought she was brilliant. She will join us on the phone tomorrow at noon. Joined now in person, though, by Michael Curry, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the board of the National NAACP. Michael, thank you very much, and it's good to see you.
Glad to be back.
You know, Michael, before we get to what you actually talked about and did at the convention that was in New York this weekend, there seems like there's been a nationwide attack on everything having to do with DEI from the president. What was the mood like there?
Well, one is I think we feel like we had so much progress after the murder of George Floyd, after COVID. There was really a movement across the country. People were making statements about how they wanted to address health inequities across the country, how they wanted to deal with racial justice divide. We were talking about mass incarceration, all these things that, quite frankly, activists, folks who've been in the mix have always talked about as being part of the problem. And then all of a sudden, this is the rollback. And as I've said, and I said this weekend in New York, if we know American history, there's always a backlash to progress.
Yeah.
And this is the backlash to progress. Too much DEI, too much equity, too much inclusion, too much wokeness, go back to sleep. And that's where we are right now, is people pushing back on that. And then now, whether it's the Senate, the House, or the White House, Pennsylvania Avenue, we're seeing it play out in policy. So people are feeling overwhelmed, the shock and awe of it, but also starting to say, okay, Kendrick Lamar, we gonna be all right, right? We're gonna turn that energy around and start to do what we always have done for 116 years.
But the headline, in fact, it was on the 11 o'clock national NPR news at the top of the show. The NAACP, I'm guessing out of your policy committee, frankly, you'll tell me if I'm wrong about that, announced they're going to be publishing some lists. Fill in the blanks for that, if you will, Michael.
Yeah, so part of what happened, I chair advocacy and policy. That means every committee of the organization, housing, education, healthcare, environmental justice, political action, all those committees, the chairs sit on my committee, and then they bring policy proposals to this committee, advocacy and policy, and then we advance those on to the full board for a vote, and they become the policy of the organization. So the chairman asked us to focus on a lot of issues around all those subject areas, and he wanted a response to Project 2025. So that means we have experts from around the country sitting on these committees, develop a proposal, a response to housing provisions within 2025, environmental justice or environmental issues in Project 2025. And now we have a comprehensive document that's our response of what we need to do to fight back in those different areas. Out of that also became the conversation of how do we now hold these companies accountable, the Walmarts, the BJs, the others who made all these statements about DEI, putting people in DEI positions to make sure that they recruited and retained people of color, supplier diversity to make sure they spent their money in communities where they're getting their revenue from, and other commitments in community. How do we hold them accountable? So we've now published organizations that have withdrawn their commitments or fallen back from it, and we're promoting organizations that have stood up. Spend your money where you're respected.
We had Mayor Wu here the other day, and we asked her, we talked about contracting with women and minority-owned businesses. And several years ago, Boston, Cambridge, where I live, the state itself, had abysmal records on contracting, particularly with black-owned firms. And I said to Mayor Wu, are you worried that those are at risk because they are specifically targeting people of color, women, the exact things and people who Donald Trump has no time for? She said, we're reversing gears on nothing. You're a pretty competent lawyer. Yeah. Even though I know you're nodding, you like what she had to say. Yeah. Are they on safe ground?
I think they're committing that they're going to fight back. So I love what she said. I love what Secretary of Health and Human Services here in Massachusetts, Kate Walsh, just said in an article. She said we're going to stand by our values. Yeah. So if we do
including
LGBT,
gender-affirming care,
gender-affirming care, health equity, we're going to step. Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, we're going to stand by our DEI commitments. Somebody has to hold a line, right? And I've said, and we talked about the words and the DEI stuff that they're saying we have to scrub off sites. I've said you run, but you can't hide. The goal is not the words. The goal is the programs.
You mean the goal on the part of the Trump people?
The goal of the part of the Trump program is not to just say, hey, stop putting it in your applications, take it off your website. They want the programs gone. They want the services gone. And you can't hide from that.
What's this list you just gave me of a bunch of words?
I gave you the list of words that's been pushed by the federal government to basically, they're going to be targeting those words in your grant applications, on your websites, and they're ridiculous.
Wait, is this real or it's not real?
That's real.
Female?
Yes.
That is targeted? Biases?
As ridiculous as marginalized.
Women.
DEI.
Women's.
Equity.
Inequity.
Health equity.
We're done.
So we're done. Can we bring it home for a second here? There was a story in the Globe the other day. You probably saw it. You're on the board of advisors here at GBH. GBH is removing language related to DEI from its website following Trump executive orders. Our boss, the CEO of GBH is quoted Susan Goldberg saying, "Our mission and values remain unchanged. We're proud of the work we do." And I'll also read from the Globe, it says, "The new page, GBH, omits mention of GBH's Office of Inclusion and Equity, doesn't include the words diversity, equity, or inclusion. Additionally, a previous link to the inclusion and equity page at the bottom of GBH's website no longer exists." And I repeat, Susan Goldberg says, "Our mission and values remain unchanged, and we're proud of the work we do." I should say, in the spirit of full disclosure, Marjorie and I are trying to learn more about the details, and our boss, Dan Lothian, has been very forthcoming, and we appreciate it, and we'll talk to him more. But you're on the board of advisors here. What's your reaction to this?
Well, one is, and I'll share this with Susan and your leadership directly, I'm disappointed. I mean, the reality is, and I go back to that phrase, you can run, but you can't hide. Public radio is a target of this administration. So you can take some words down, but they want you to stop doing the documentaries, right? They don't want those woke documentaries you've been doing with Skip Gates and these other documentaries that really reintroduce people to American history. They don't want the conversations that you have holding people accountable on this show, the two of you, and having these critical conversations. So ultimately, is the goal really to take some words down? And if you take the words down, you'll still be the target of the administration, and you'll still be subject to losing your funding. As we as health centers are having this same conversation across the country, are like, wait a minute, do we stop doing health equity work and stroke programs for Black men who die higher rates of stroke? Do we not do trans health care if you're Fenway Health and you were born out of this movement to address HIV/AIDS and deal with the health equity issues for LGBTQIA communities? If you're Boston Healthcare for the homeless and you're using harm reduction to save lives, if you're a health center and you're doing reentry work, do you stop doing it if it's a part of your DNA? And I think, quite frankly, to your question, this is part of your DNA at GBH. This is part of your DNA at PBS. So the more you walk away from it, you can't help but to walk away from your values and your mission. They're one and the same.
Yeah, no, I think, as Jim said, we still need to get more information from our leadership. But even when it comes to changing the language, I wish we hadn't done it.
I am with you. So can we talk, bring it back home? You mentioned that Kate Walsh, who's head of Health and Human Services, said essentially we're standing strong. We're not going to retreat from many of our things. But then also in the Globe is a piece by someone I think you admire greatly. That'd be you. Saying community health
Most
center.
days I admire you. Some days I don't.
Most days we admire you too, Michael. Not all days. You seem to be saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, we are at risk in the community health centers. And so where's the truth lie?
I mean, the truth is we're at risk, right? So the problem is, one, you make a stand, right? And what I've said often here and across the country is don't over-retreat, right? These are executive orders. They have to play out. They're being challenged. We've challenged them as the NAACP. Our state attorney generals are challenging them. Republicans are challenging them. Republican leaders across the state as well when it impacts their state. We're going to challenge these, and let's see where it falls in the courts. But don't over-retreat. I think arguably, and you and I have had this conversation, Jim, the people who retreat the fastest usually didn't want to do the work in the first place, right? So if I retreat on my DEI, if I retreat on my health equity program, I really didn't want to do that program in the first place. Stand your ground, hold firm, get your lawyers in place, advocate, be in DC, be in Congress, advocate on why this saves lives and dollars for all people. We do treat, as for health centers, we treat people in rural areas. We treat Republicans and MAGA folks in rural communities. We got to tell that story and say this is what we do. And health equity is not just Black and brown folks. Health equity is the rural person who has to travel an hour to get to health care. It's the person who's dealing with Alzheimer's or cancer or diabetes. That's the work we do. We got to protect that.
You know, Michael, you Marjorie started by saying you were at your meeting, the NAACP leadership meeting in New York City. I read something about a resolution you did about somebody who, I remember nothing from my youth, by the way. The one thing I remember is I had a teacher who, and I may have been in 4th or even 3rd grade, who admired Joe Louis, not just because he's one of the greatest boxers who ever lived, but because of his courage in the face of racism and all these sort of things. Joe Louis is long gone, but his memory is not. What'd you guys do around Joe Louis?
So back in November during the election, I was one of the attorneys who went to Michigan, to Detroit, to do election protection. And we were in the office all day taking complaints of people who were having a hard time voting. And one of the staff said, hey, we're going to take you to someplace downtown Detroit to eat. It happened to be the Joe Louis family restaurant.
Oh, that's great.
So I knew his history, but I didn't know the depth of what he did and contributed to this country. So we ate, and the son came over, and he introduced himself.
Joe Lewis's
son.
Yeah.
He ended up eating lunch with us. And that led to us passing a resolution this past Saturday on behalf of his father. So I'll just tell you some parts of it. Joe Louis, known worldwide as the Brown Bomber, was born in May 13, 1914, in a humble shack in Lafayette, Alabama, to parents of former slaves, and overcame tremendous hardship, poverty, and racial discrimination. After turning professional in 1934, the 6'2" Lewis won the World Heavyweight Championship in 1937 and defended his title a record 25 times over 12 years, including 2 massively popular matches against German Max Schmeling, the reigning world heavyweight champion in 1936, that were viewed as symbolic battles against Nazi racism and oppression, resulting in Lewis losing the first fight by knockout in the 12th round, only to return 2 years later to knock Schmeling out.
In the first round, right? Wasn't the first round?
Within 2 minutes.
That's great.
Lewis's dignified conduct and sportsmanship made him a beloved American hero who transcended boxing and race in this country. During World War II, Lewis' boxing career was interrupted in 1942 when he enlisted in the U.S. Army, rose to the rank of sergeant, served honorably for 3 years, fought in nearly 100 exhibition matches before an estimated 2 million troops, of which over $100,000 was donated to the Army and Navy relief funds. It goes on to talk about his career and his contribution, but it goes on to talk about something most people didn't know, that this country weaponized its agencies and used the IRS to go after him and took all of his proceeds, all of his revenue, all of his earnings, and made him poor. And they were doing that using new tax laws. And of course, the family sent me the IRS redacted language. And one of the things that's in the language that they sent me, it says, he's been neutralized. Yeah. Right? So if you know J. Edgar Hoover, if people know American history.
FBI.
Yeah, the FBI. Agencies have always been used to target civil rights heroes, activists. They were Dr. King, Malcolm X, the Black Panthers. That's history now that even Republicans acknowledge. So the reality is we made a resolution asking for Congress to look into the injustice against Joe Louis and his family and ask the U.S. Treasury to reimburse the family for his loss of earnings. They've been trying to fight for this for years. This is the first time in this nation's history that people are asking. There's other, Sammy Davis Jr. was one of those that was targeted by the federal government and others.
You know, one of the things we wanted to talk to you about healthcare and Carney Hospital and this Canton Hospital too for kids. I just wondered, you know, you're not a politician, but you're sort of a semi in that mold. And we think a lot, or I certainly think a lot, I think a lot of people think a lot about what Democrats should be doing now, or what American citizens should be doing. I mean, is it going to take us a few weeks to react to this, a few months? Do we need some charismatic leader to kind of set a different tone?
Should Jim sell his Tesla?
Should Jim sell his Tesla? Of course, as I told Jim, if I had a Tesla, I, of course, would sell mine immediately, but I don't, so I don't have to worry about it. But what do you think?
So the reaction to
what Trump is doing?
You know, it's all in, right? You got to have all your tools in your tool belt. It has to be legal. It has to be in the streets. It has to be advocacy. It has to be voter engagement. It's 2 years, right? So the midterm election should be action plan right now. You should be trying to appeal to the hearts and minds of voters who now their eggs are still going up, right? That all the things that they said they wanted under him, that now they're worried about the fact that Ukraine and Russia, we're trying to negotiate a peace, but yet Ukraine's not at the table.
Stop right there. Here's the text from Anonymous. I was watching the news about Ukraine war, peace negotiations, not including Ukraine, and I remembered that great Michael Curry quote, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Michael Curry.
And I think it goes across the board. The fact that now we have tension with Canada, right, an ally, right? Hockey game, you saw that the other night. We're fighting with, I mean, they fight at all hockey games, but they're fighting with the tension and they're booing Americans. We are not in a good position across the globe. And this shock and awe is hurting everyone. So now I get all the Republican friends I have will call me and say, well, I didn't buy into this. This isn't frankly, what I expected. Shame on them, right? I said on this show, and I kind of did it impromptu, I said, they know not what they do. Now they're realizing that what they did was not in their best interest, and if they had calculated all their interests, then the price of eggs and all those other things they thought they were interested in, or their fear of racial or racial justice and their fear of women's rights, and did not outweigh whatever that concern was, all the other interests that they have that they didn't pay attention to. Now they're realizing it, but it's too late. So the reality is they now got to show up in the courts, in organizations, at GBH, and make the right decisions.
You know, we're talking to Michael Curry from the NAACP and the Mass League of Community Health Centers.
Tell us what's going on at Kearney Hospital.
So Kearney, we've been meeting. Credit to Dr. Ojikutu, the head of Boston Health Commission. I co-chair that working group with her, and all the members of the working group been meeting hard. We meet at the mayor's office.
We should step back a second. Kearney was closed.
Kearney was closed.
It's in Dorchester.
We're closed during the Stewart thing. Mayor Wu appointed a committee, and her public health commissioner and you were the co-chairs.
Yeah, so we've been meeting to look at what the options are, what can be put into place to make sure that people still have access to emergency room service, that they still have access to urgent care, that there's still workers in that area, because quite frankly, when you took all those employees out of Kearney Hospital, what it might have done and may have done to decimate the mom and pop businesses and the restaurants and the stores in that area, that data still hasn't been released yet. We know that there's implications to a hospital closing, including access, including health disparities, that community has higher rates of diabetes, cancer, name the disease, poverty, food insecurity, housing insecurity. What does it mean when a hospital is closed? So we've been meeting to figure out what goes there next, what can be done to make sure we provide those services, and we'll be providing a report to the governor and the mayor by March. But I'm very impressed with the depth and the sincerity in which everyone's come to the table. And we actually did a community meeting to make sure we gathered as much input. If you've not done that, still submit your thoughts. We want to take that in consideration. We chart a path
How do
forward.
they submit their thoughts?
Yep, so I'd say Boston Health Commission. There's a way to commit through the Boston, send it in through the Boston Health Commission. If you go to the Boston Health Commission, I believe they still have the access link up to do that.
What happens to someone who is dependent upon now, not in the future, at Kearney Hospital for services? Where do they go, if anywhere?
Well, I mean, that's the problem with closure, right? Whether it's the closure of a health center or a closure of a hospital or a closure of a nursing home, is that people have to travel long distances to get care. So if you're in Dorchester, Milton area, you got Milton Hospital, which is already overcrowded and can't absorb all those patients. You can make that trek by train. Many of these people don't have cars. Make that trek over to Brigham's and Women's Hospital or Mass General Hospital.
How about your operation?
Or Brigham's and Women's. We're already taking some of those patients that are displaced by the hospital system, but we're not a hospital system.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So we're a primary care provider. You know, we're the health safety net. We eventually need to send them to places to get that hospital level of care.
What happened?
And
I mean, I'm sorry,
they're laying
Margaret.
off all these people at Mass General, which is pretty scary too.
I want to warn people that the healthcare system in this country is frail, is extremely frail right now. No matter where you go, rural hospitals are closing. Our Massachusetts healthcare system, open your paper, BBJ, Boston Globe, Herald. Every day you'll see signs that this is a very strained healthcare system. We have to figure out a way to preserve our institutions. Otherwise, we pay for it later. We pay for it because we don't have access, because you got to wait in that emergency room. Anyone in this room right now could be waiting in an emergency room 5 hours for care, and sick is unacceptable.
You know, I wanted to ask you, I never even heard about this Children's Hospital in Canton until I read this piece in the Globe. Jason Laughlin talked about the place. I guess is really in horrible disrepair. But at least according to this story, it does a very good job. There was a young man who had been paralyzed. He got caught in the crossfire of a shooting. Somebody else with cerebral palsy. That this place is on the verge of closing, and people would have to go, these children would have to go 100 miles away to get care.
Yeah, so one is I read the article on Miguel Rivera, the 18-year-old who was the victim of that shooting and is now paralyzed as a result of it. Just my heart bleeds for him. Two is just, again, to my point about the healthcare system being broken. States like our state are having to make really difficult decisions about buildings that are in disrepair. And I'll go back to the article the conversation about Kearney Hospital.
Yes.
Kearney is in disrepair. It's a poorly managed building. Stewart didn't take care of it. They took all that money, milked it of its resources, and didn't invest that money into the building. Similarly, this hospital has not been invested in. It's, I think, a 60-decade-old organization that hasn't had the resources. So if you're a provider coming in and you want to come in and build you want a state-of-the-art facility, you want the right infrastructure for the technology, for the care, you want quality level of care. What we're finding is many of these buildings aren't built for quality care. They were built many, many years ago. So governors like ours and our Department of Public Health Commissioner Goldstein are having to weigh all of what's possible to do in a facility and what to do in terms of transferring patients to where they can be treated in a quality, timely way.
You know, speaking of carne, I hadn't thought of this till you and Margie were just talking about it. We know that that Malta has indicted Ralph Delatorre, head of Stewart Hospital, and whatever the number 2 guy's name is, who lives in Brookline, by the way, Marjorie. And we have been told prior to Trump's inauguration that the United States Justice Department was investigating as well. We just saw, we're going to talk to John King about what happened to Eric Adams in New York City because he kissed up to Donald Trump and promised to help deport people in his city and violated the law by allowing them into a jail that violates local law, I should say, in addition to everything else. Do we have any indication as to whether or not this possible dilatory prosecution, because they haven't announced anything yet, is at risk? Is he another Trump sycophant or?
Well, I haven't heard that, and I hope that that's not the case. And as I think that Donald Trump has historically protected the wealthy.
And people who screw low income and people of color.
And the reality is, I mean, the record speaks for itself. One of the things I was very proud of this weekend in New York is I was part of my committee advancing a resolution entitled Addressing the Role of Private Equity in Healthcare.
Oh, tell us about it.
We passed it,
Yeah.
and it basically calls for some accountability, some transparency, because this is not just here in Massachusetts with Stewart. It's across the country.
Yeah.
For-profit entities are coming in, taking over healthcare institutions, milking them of the money, and then deciding, you know what, we've gotten what we needed, and we're leaving patients high and dry. And now we're passing resolutions that then turn into advocacy. We send these out to 2,200 NAACP units across the country and say, make this your agenda. Go after these venture capital-backed entities and make sure that the regulatory framework in your state holds them accountable.
Can you end with the thing you started with, or we talked earlier about this list that the NAACP put out of, I guess, retailers, large businesses, which have retrenched on DEI, and those who are sticking by it are arguing that you should patronize the latter and avoid the former. How do people find this?
How do people respond?
How do they find the list?
Oh, yeah. So go to NAACP.org and pull that up. You know, in terms of the black community, we know that our buying power is $1.8 trillion. We spend a lot of money. And we're telling people, put your money where your mouth is. And if you don't feel like organizations respect you, appreciate you, value you, shop where they appreciate and respect you. So $1.8 trillion, hopefully there's a shift from organizations that are not sticking to what they said they would do after George Floyd. And they're eliminating DEI roles, they're eliminating supply diversity, they're drawing back from their community investments. It's a problem, and we can hold them accountable with our dollars.
We should all go to Costco.
You should.
I'm switching to Costco myself.
But they're hanging tough. How is it that because they're under a lot of pressure too from their shareholders, right?
I mean, ultimately, it's about values, right?
Yeah.
So you say, hey, you go to your board or you go to your shareholders and say, this is what we believe in, and we're asking you to stand firm with us. And then you take the hits and you figure it out, and then in the end, truth catches up to history always, right? That's my phrase. So if anyone ever says that's my quote.
But you know what
Truth
else?
always catches up eventually.
But this reminds me somewhat of the bully that takes your lunch money on Monday and you don't do anything about it. He takes your lunch money on Tuesday and you don't do anything about it. And before that, he's taking your lunch buddy, your backpack, your shoes, the whole thing. It's like people seem to think this is going to work.
Yeah, I don't know why I thought of My Bodyguard was a movie that played way back in the day.
Yeah, that's
Just
right.
had a flashback to that movie. But the moral to the story is stand up.
Yeah.
Right? Stand up for yourself. Stand up for the patients you serve, the communities you serve, because your compass tells you this ain't right. And when your compass says it ain't right, I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, no matter what your ideological view is, ultimately you know when something's wrong. And we really got to tug and pull at people's compass, and hopefully we do the right thing.
I want to thank you for not saying on the air whether I should sell my Tesla. You can just text me later, Michael, and tell me what you think. Michael Curry, League of Community Health Centers, NAACP. Thanks so much, Michael.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much. We have been speaking with Michael Curry, as Jim just said, CEO of the Mass League of Community Health Centers, on the board of the National NAACP, co-chair of a city-led investigation of the impacts of the closure of Dorchester's Carney Hospital. Coming up, we're going to talk with Shirley Leung, business columnist for the Boston Globe and host of the Say More podcast, another one about Mayor Wu and the symbolism of her not taking a maternity leave after she had baby number 3. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Americans spend $100 billion on state lotteries each year, mostly on scratch tickets. And it all started with one slip of paper in Massachusetts.
It says, using edge of coin, rub square spot at right, and a number appears.
I'm Ian Koss, the host of Scratch and Win, a new podcast about how the scratcher sparked a gambling revolution.
We knew we had the world by the tail.
Listen to Scratch and Win wherever you get podcasts.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Elephant Energy, specializing in all-electric heat pumps from Mitsubishi Electric. Elephant Energy helps homeowners looking to reduce their carbon footprint. Learn more at elephantenergy.com. And American Repertory Theater, presenting The Odyssey, Kate Hamill's newest world premiere adaptation that turns a contemporary lens on Homer's classic tale. Now playing through March 16th. amrep.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now at the library by Shirley Leung, business columnist for the Boston Globe and host of the wonderful Say More podcast. Hello, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
You're traveling with people today.
I
Who are
do.
these
I have an
people?
entourage today.
Who are they?
So it's school vacation week in
It
Massachusetts for public schools, and I have Mia from Dedham High School, and I have Jessica from
Hi,
Hopkinton.
you guys. Welcome. Glad you're here.
They are aspiring journalists. They are both journalists in high school.
Oh, good for them.
I think Jessica is the editor of her paper. Mia, you work at the paper. Mia also works at the paper as well.
Great. Fabulous.
So they're shadowing me for half a day. I'm trying to, as you know, most of the stuff we do is pretty boring. You know, it's on phone calls and on laptops. So I'm trying to be like, okay, what's exciting?
So wait a second.
Well, come here.
Are your two sons running wild in the streets of Milton? Where are they?
One is at basketball camp.
Of course
and
he is.
another is at home in front of the computer.
Okay, okay, sure.
Doing who knows what.
Exactly.
Good to see you, Shirley.
And so you deserve congratulations here. You've been crusading on the liquor license front for quite a long time. And now we have a bunch of restaurants from Mattapan, Roxbury, Hyde Park, East Boston that are getting liquor licenses.
It's really exciting. Last fall, the state legislature allowed for Boston to create 225 new liquor licenses. We know that there was so much interest in terms of these liquor licenses because for a long time, Boston, you couldn't, they were so expensive. It'd be $600,000 to buy a license. And so by minting these new licenses, all of them free, really gave more opportunity for mom and pop restaurants all over the city, or many parts of the city, I should say, access to these liquor licenses. And so Mattapan, it's very exciting. Mattapan, Blue Mountain, a Jamaican restaurant, got a license.
Yeah.
Last time when the state issued a lot of new licenses more than a decade ago, not a single one landed in Mattapan. So this is great. I think the mayor will be visiting Blue Mountain Jamaica restaurant tonight. Now, of course, even though the licensing board in Boston approved 37 licenses, it still needs to go to the ABCC, the State Alcoholic Beverage Commissions. But usually they approve. Yeah.
You know what I wonder? Remember when Uber and Lyft were coming into, was Uber first, of course, and the taxi owners of medallions were beside themselves because they had paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for these medallions, which became overnight worth almost nothing. Have I missed the blowback from restaurants that did pay hundreds of thousands of dollars?
Well, they still have value because a lot of the restaurants have what they call full value liquor licenses. They can be used anywhere in the city.
And they can sell them.
And they can sell them for profit. But these licenses are free, but you
can't be sold.
You can't be sold. When you're done with them, you have to return them to the city. Now, there will be 12 of these full value licenses give out. The licensing board, when they met last week, that they had a lot of interest in these full value licenses, but they decided to hold off handing out any of these licenses yet. But stay tuned. There is a follow-up on what's going on with full value licenses, existing licenses.
Okay, all right.
Before we leave this, I want to echo what Marjorie said. You and some of your colleagues, I think, forced this issue by doing some
My colleague
fabulous...
Diddy Coley.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, wonderful reporting on this. And one other issue that I know drives Marjorie at least as nuts as it does me. Ordinarily, we are railing against home rule petitions, the notion that the legislature should ever get involved in an issue that only affects people in a particular jurisdiction. If local officials want it, they were elected, then they should be able to have it, a la rent control, Mayor Wu's rent control, the transfer tax on high-value real estate, etc. Is there ever a discussion on Beacon Hill that maybe Boston should decide who has liquor licenses in Boston as opposed to a rep from Fitchburg or wherever the hell?
I think the only discussion is happening here.
Okay.
Because I brought this up. I said, would this ever happen? And I'm told the reason why the legislature won't give up that power of allowing Boston to decide its own fate on liquor licenses because the legislature would lose power, and so
Which is a pretty bad argument.
Yes.
Boy, is it ever.
And this has to do with everything, right? It has to do with rent control and so many other issues that Boston is trying to do that wouldn't impact any place else. I mean, it's really pretty shameful.
It's arrogant and undemocratic, and it's a power grab is all it is.
I mean, one of the reasons why this home rule petition made it through was Brian Morrell from the city council put it forth. I think there were had to go through 2 cycles to make it up to the legislature. But the reason why his petition for more licenses made it through is because, guess what? His brother's a state rep from Dorchester. So Chris Morrell decided to take up the home rule petition and push it through as legislation, and it got a lot of support from Liz Miranda in the district, and of course Aaron Michaelwitz also helped grease the wheels, get it going as well.
The next speaker is now the House Ways and Means Chair, also from Boston.
And from North End, representing North End.
We're talking to Shirley Leung.
The State Treasurer, Deb Goldberg, issued this 80-page report just made public last week, basically attacking the former head of the Cannabis Commission, Shannon O'Brien, who ran for governor against Mitt Romney. She was a longtime legislator. She's taking Goldberg to court. This suit has cost the Commonwealth already $970,000. What's the deal?
Goldberg fired her, we should say,
yes, she
a year
did fire
or so
her.
ago, yeah.
Well, I think in this report we learned that, before it was all about, inappropriate racial comments or allegations of inappropriate racial comments from Shannon O'Brien. Now we learned, more kind of clearly that Deb Goldberg was upset about the treatment of Sean Collins.
Who used to work for her.
Right, who used to work for her and was the executive director of the Cannabis Control Commission, felt that he deserved a graceful exit, and he didn't get that. So you can see she was quite upset about that, thought that that O'Brien pressured Collins to resign, and so she didn't like that. And so there were a lot of things that, I'm dying to know, like, what happened between Goldberg and O'Brien.
There's much more to this story, I should say.
Yeah.
O'Brien's people are saying, we want a full release of everything.
That's right.
And I have to say, when I read the Globe reporting on this, one of the comments that Goldberg chose to include, to me, really is troubling. According to the report, I'm reading from the Globe story, O'Brien's attorney had at one point accidentally mixed up O'Brien's name and someone else's, which is redacted from the report. The mistake prompted O'Brien to interject, "You're getting all of us Irish people mixed up," according to Goldberg's report. I have to say, if that's it, we would be fired.
I think that's a joke on
And
O'Brien's part,
even
right?
if it was not the right joke at the right time, as Goldberg says, that's included in a report as to why a person with a pretty stellar reputation until these accusations and career is fired as head of the Cannabis Control Commission. So,
as an Irish woman, I would like to say that the days of Irish need not apply are over with. The Irish have run this town for quite some time. We were all surprised when Tom Menino, an Italian, snuck in, but it was basically Irish run for a long time.
And by the way, and another charge, which on its face is pretty serious, about language that Shannon O'Brien used, and I think she admits she used this, and a term she used for Asian, she said she was repeating, which may have been unwise. I don't think fireable, a term a black developer in town had used to describe Asian people. What we're going to do, Marjorie and I decided this morning, and we didn't convey it to Zoe, and we will, we're going to invite them both to come in. both O'Brien and Goldberg. We've
What
had
are
them
the
on
chance?
the past.
What are the chances both
The
of them
same chance that the Speaker and the Senate President will join us.
Exactly.
No, I, by the way, I don't know about that. I think it's not, maybe not together, but I think they might.
Yeah,
and
not
by the way,
together,
this
not
matters
together.
more than the Cannabis Control Commission. This is a powerful state leader deciding to fire a person with, as I say, a pretty excellent reputation until this.
Well,
this is a serious
damaging
issue.
her reputation
Yeah,
big time, obviously.
and arguably the Cannabis Control Commission, which is now in total chaos. So we're not done with this. This is what happened in the last couple of days, and there'll be more on our show. We're talking to Shirley Leung.
So Shirley Leung, people know that Josh Kraft, son of Robert Kraft, who owns the New England Patriots, is running for mayor, and there's a lot of concern about any possible conflicts. Now we have this whole thing with FIFA, that's how I say it.
Yeah, FIFA.
FIFA World Cup coming to Boston with expectations that taxpayers are going to put down a lot of money for improvements to the stadium, the Foxborough rail station, a lot of expenses to accommodate FIFA. This is a conflict for Josh Kraft, isn't it?
Well, right now he's not. He's not doing the negotiation. It's really between the city of Boston and the Kraft family, which owns the New England Revolutions,
Right.
and so that's a big part of the FIFA 20 World Cup coming to.
Well, he wants to be mayor. What does he negotiate with his father if he's elected? I mean, I don't mean that critically.
No.
What
I mean,
happens?
right now, I assume these negotiations will happen this year will be done before 2026 or before the election is over. But who knows? I shouldn't
Even
say
with
that.
them going on right now, it looks weird to me.
It does look weird, and
Yeah.
but he isn't involved in these negotiations. But I think the story by Janelle Nanos and Emma Platoff was supposed to highlight the potential conflicts of interest because the Kraft family has a lot of money, has and as one of their the experts they quoted, it's one thing to put your investments in a blind trust, but you can't put the New England Patriots or the New England Revolutions in a blind trust. There are all kinds of conflicts, and so that will be something Josh Kraft will have to navigate if he's elected mayor. I mean, also in the story talked about soccer stadiums, right? The Kraft family wants to build a new stadium in Everett for the New England Revolution. Now, I think that's even more.
Well, we raised that with Wu the
Yes.
other day. And here's for those who don't know about this, without getting lost in the weeds, the state statute, correct me if I'm wrong, allowing the Revs, Kraft-owned Revs, to build their stadium in Everett said you have to negotiate with both Everett and the city of Boston. You're statutorily mandated. If you don't reach a deal, I think there's arbitration or some damn thing down the line. Now, so it's statutorily mandated. The first, an agreement either has been reached or is close to being reached, I can't remember, in Everett. The first offer from the Revs/Crafts, again, not Josh, but the Kraft organization, was $750,000.
Right.
Mayor Wu's response is, when Encore was built, the city got $68 million. $750,000 is a joke. And we asked her about this. And let me just say, here's what Mayor Wu had to say about that with this Everett soccer stadium.
That's a gigantic conflict of interest that I think is on him to sort out, and honestly to be more forthright on. You can't recuse yourself from being mayor, and this is a mega development project that is going to have tremendous impacts on the city of Boston.
You know, I am always willing to give people advice who didn't ask for it. I'm not sure what I would say if Josh Kraft called me on the phone and said, hey, what do you think I should do here? I mean, you are running for mayor, so on one hand, you should say, here's what I think the city should do in terms of Everett and what they're entitled to. On the other hand, it may prejudice the actual negotiations because your father's organization is doing it. So it's a problem. And there's another issue.
But he's staying out of it.
I understand that, but he wants to run the city
Yes,
that
he
is
does.
now negotiating, has been offered $750,000 and wants $68 million.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. The second thing, which is there was this rent control proposal, an opt-in rent control proposal that Josh Kraft put out a week or so ago. When Mayor Wu was with us, she said it's already before the city council. Days later, the city council passes it. Josh Kraft's people say, well, once again, they're doing stuff because we suggested. Of course, the city councilor said, we had hearings on this months ago. But the interesting thing about this, while they passed it, and I think it's supported by the mayor with us last week called it fake rent control.
I was surprised by that.
So is it good. I know she says it's not enough.
Yes, yeah.
But fake rent control sounds like I don't want that thing either.
Right.
So is she going to sign that, I assume?
I mean, it sounds like she does support Councilor Coletta's proposal.
Right. Sorry.
But I think where she, on one hand, she's not wrong. It is fake rent control, This is the idea that it would be a voluntary program, that landlords who follow certain rules, will get a tax break,
credit, yeah.
Tax break. Now, Josh Kraft plan would apply to many more properties and would be, not year by year, but would I think it's like over a decade. So it's a little more perhaps substantial. And I think actually both sides, some people, I think developers and landlords, they were surprised that Josh Kraft jumped on the rent control bandwagon, because a lot of the people in the business community don't like it, and I think you could see Mayor Wu was kind of surprised that he jumped on one of her, tried to commandeer one of her signature issues, getting rent control passed by the state. So I think she'll sign it. I think you're right, Jim. I think the reason why she kind of attacked the Kraft proposal is because she thinks it's just one tiny piece of the puzzle.
By the way, before we continue, Marjorie said in our last segment with Michael Curry that she was going to join Costco. Of course, some of us
You have not joined Costco?
Some of us already belong to Costco, Marjorie.
Sorry.
Joyce from Acton, this is a fabulous text. Last week I was at Costco, New Hampshire. At checkout, I made a comment praising Costco for staying strong regarding DEI. The man placing the items in my cart said, this almost makes me cry. Yes, now I have a safe place to work.
Oh, wow.
The cashier said that Costco membership had soared all across the country. Wanted to share that wonderful information. That is a beautiful little anecdote. That is beautiful, Joyce.
What's interesting,
Thank
when you look at a lot of these polls, they say Americans do not want to trash all these programs.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. There was it Pew Research that did the poll?
The only thing where mass deportation, sadly, the American people still seem to be on board with. Shirley, you alerted us about something that I had paid no attention to. Well, I knew it was coming. I didn't know about the inner workings. The 250th anniversary of the country is imminent, and it appears, and Massachusetts is sort of central in that history.
Shot heard around the world.
Exactly.
April 19th.
Or maybe it's not.
Not.
So
1775.
What's the status of the preparations?
So there seems to be a lot of infighting in advocates who want to see Massachusetts really celebrate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. And we did a story comparing our efforts to Virginia and Philadelphia, which are spending a lot more money than us. And I'm a little, I don't know, I kept on thinking, like, should we should make a big deal out of it, but I was thinking maybe we're not spending as much as Philadelphia or Virginia, because I don't know, maybe we're upset about democracy. Maybe we're upset about the American Revolution.
Well, I would argue if you're upset about democracy right now, that's even more reason to celebrate the freedom from.
That's true.
Don't you think?
Though it seems like we're going back to monarchies, right?
Well, that's a good point. That is a fairly good point.
I mean, I'd rather them fight the return of the monarchy than celebrate.
I think they could celebrate the 250th and fight the return of the monarchy.
No, but I would like to see a celebration. I mean, I'm hoping that we'll get our act together, but besides, understand it's close. And the thing is that we have one moment, we're at the beginning, right? And then next year is 2026. So next year is the big year, the actual July 4th.
What are we doing in Lexington and Concord? What's happening in the short run?
I don't know. My sister's all excited. She's getting a costume. She wants to go.
She's a huge history person.
She wants to come up to do whatever, to see whatever's going on in Lexington and Concord in 2 months.
I mean, I went for the first time.
I guess I'll have to go.
You did?
Last April. It was great. We
went
at
the
kids? We went at 5:30. I mean, they were screaming, kicking and screaming.
Muskets.
We left at like 5 in the morning, or actually we left at 4:45 to get to Lexington at 5:30. Yeah, people were dressed up, and someone always has a party, like this house we went to, it was on the green or whatever, and so it was great. It was people dressed up. We took pictures with the British soldiers and the muskets and the colonials fighting. It was fascinating, So I mean, And then we didn't stay for the parade in the afternoon, but maybe, I was excited about the beginning of
Well, then
April
you should
19th.
be supporting us making a serious effort.
I know. Well, I'm hoping we can pull it off, and we are all about history, so
We
I think it's going to be huge this year.
It has. Well, I think it will be huge.
Yeah, it will be huge. Next year's going to be even bigger.
Shirley, the other day when Mayor Wu was with us, we didn't know this was happening. She brought the kid. Mira,
she brought Mira?
Yes.
I didn't know that. She was feeding the kid.
Nursing right
for the
here.
first 10 minutes of the show.
Yep.
And then Connor, her husband, who was also here.
Oh, we never see Connor.
We saw him.
We saw Mira a lot, but we never see Connor.
Connor was here, and Connor took his daughter from the mayor when she was done feeding her.
You had Connor here? Everyone sees Mira, but Connor?
We saw him.
Connor exists.
Oh, my God.
Yes, he does. We saw him in the
I
flesh.
said hello. He was very warm.
Yep.
And he was,
Does he look tired?
He looks exhausted.
He looks
exhausted.
I mean, because she has they have two other kids.
That's
two
right.
Boys,
We're aware of that.
Two boys.
And
I was like,
somebody's-
You've never
and he's
seen Connor?
Not in person.
Well, we have.
Wow. And because he's the stay-at-home dad. That's what allows Mayor Wu to be Mayor Wu.
Well, she
Supermom.
brought the kid, and she fed the kid, and then after that was done, she handed off little Mira, who is quite lovely, I should say.
So did Connor have one of those what do you call those? The baby carriers?
The baby carrier. No, but the mayor had a very discreet over-the-shoulder nursing thing. Which,
right. The slings.
So mothers can do the whole thing very discreetly.
So this
right
is
there
a
on camera.
segue
We loved
into
it.
the famous Say More podcast by Shirley Leung.
It was great. It was great. You
About
and Joe
pregnancy?
Vinaki and a woman who was about to have her first or second kid, I think,
Anna
right?
Customer, she's
Yeah.
like 5 minutes pregnant.
Oh,
Yeah,
great.
from here and from formerly of GBH, and
Oh,
so
she's
we
great.
had a discussion about the politics of motherhood.
Yeah.
And one of the questions was, is baby Mira a prop? Which I think is unfair. Anna thought was unfair, but Joan Vinaki, she goes there, of course.
But you know what I think is someone who's got 3 kids. I mean, you're beside yourself with your first kid because it's such an explosion. Your whole life is turned upside down. Second kid, not so much. Third kid, it's like, piece of cake. I mean, you've done this twice already, and your skids are greased, as it were, and you're dying to get back to work because, you got to get away from the other 2 kids.
I mean, that's certainly what Mayor Wu. That's her. That's what she's been like, right?
Yeah. I mean, imagine people that had 9 kids back in the day. Can you imagine?
Well,
Boy, it's a wonder everybody knew the nice kid's name.
Right, but the big question is, will Mayor Wu bring the baby to Congress?
Let me tell you, who the first person
I
asked that question? Marjorie Egan.
Oh yeah, what did she say?
She just kind of made.
No, she didn't. Did you ask her?
I did.
What'd she say?
I said something like, I hope you're going to bring the baby to Congress.
She didn't
And
answer.
She made a face indicating to me she probably is not. But then again, she's a nursing mother, so maybe Connor will be there in the audience with the baby.
Well,
I would love it.
Well, I think she has to talk to her doctors.
We
right?
have to end this, but can I ask you a question?
What?
How do we know it was the real Connor, now that I think about it?
That's
Since
right.
That's
I'm
true.
kidding. We know it was the real Connor. He was
All
very...
right, next time, text me.
Yeah.
If
We'll
say
take a
Mira's
photo.
here
Sorry.
and Connor's here,
Run,
I'm going to
Shirley,
run
run.
to the BPL right now because Connor is here.
Shirley, it's great to
I
see
don't think
you
she
and
would
your
have
2
handed
colleagues.
the baby to a stranger, Jim. Do you think?
I don't know.
No, probably not.
She offered him to me, and I said I was busy doing the show, so she got somebody out of the audience whose name was Connor. That's all I know. Shirley, it's great
Thank
to see
you, Shirley. Thanks
Don't
for
lead
having me.
these young women astray,
Yeah,
all right,
Shirley,
I won't,
okay?
I won't.
Okay,
Yeah,
fine.
we've been speaking with Shirley Leung, host of the Say More podcast, which I just adore, and business columnist in the Boston Globe. And if you want to hear about being a stay-at-home mom or going right back to work, it's a place to go. Up next, time for 2.
Shirley just walks by me and she says to me, "You guys met Connor?" I thought she was kidding.
Wow, you think we met Bruce Springsteen?
Okay,
or
go
something.
ahead.
Up
Sorry.
next, it's time for 2 more things Jim and I cannot stop talking about. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live at the Boston Public Library, and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
A Syrian soccer player became...
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the 2nd consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Boston Ballet, presenting Swan Lake. This timeless love story features thrilling dancing, masterful music, and breathtaking sets. On stage beginning February 27th through March 16th. Official tickets at bostonballet.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. It's time for two more things. We're short on time. Marjorie mentions one thing. I mention another. Take it away, Marjorie.
Well, I just was so sad to hear the Associated Press, which is the bulwark of newspapers, particularly small newspapers all across the country, has had to cut so many reporters that they're down now to 6 reporters across 5 New England states, which is just crazy. They can't really... You notice, especially if you have a small paper, a lot of stories are not written by that small paper. They're written by the Associated Press, even in big papers like the Globe. And the Associated Press is very courageous now in the standoff with the White House because they refuse to call the Gulf of America the Gulf of the Gulf of Mexico, the Gulf of America. They're getting banished from the press conferences. So I'm sorry about their financial travails, but kudos to them for standing up to the president.
Well, since you mentioned it, that is my one more thing. Again, they call it the Gulf of America rather than the Gulf of Mexico. As a result, the White House has barred them, the Associated Press reporters, from the Oval Office and Air Force One. You point, and by the way, this is from an administration that talks freedom of speech, anti-censorship, but then they're abrogating the free speech right of the Associated Press. You brought up something I'd forgotten about. This happened during the Obama administration when Obama barred Fox News from an interview with Ken Feinberg, who we've had on the show, the legendary disaster compensation guy. You know what happened? ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN refused to participate in any Obama press events until he relented, which he did. So rather than supportive statements from other media outlets for the Associated Press, every one of them should do what was done during the Obama administration, refuse to go to a Trump event until the Associated Press reporters are allowed back in.
Yeah, that would be a wonderful idea.
It is a wonderful idea.
You're going to miss the Associated Press because they do great work and they've done it for like decades. Anyway, up next, after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by John King from CNN. We're going to talk to him about what's going on in D.C. and what the Democrats can do about it. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com.
Tickets at huntingtontheater.org. And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 3 of Boston Public.
Got out, at least 19 sustained injuries. 2 people remain hospitalized. Authorities say none of the injuries is life-threatening. At a briefing today, airport president and CEO Deborah Flynn said 2 major runways are closed.
That is affecting the volume of traffic that we're having. So passengers should be looking and working with their airlines, checking our website for information on delays and potential cancellations as well for the next several days.
Flynn says the investigation has just begun and declined to say if the crash was the result of weather conditions on the tarmac. The crash was the latest in a series of aviation incidents, and just weeks ago, 67 people were killed in a mid-air collision outside Washington, D.C. between an American Airlines regional jet and a military helicopter. Elon Musk is not the leader of President Trump's federal cost-cutting entity, the Department of Government Efficiency. That, according to a court filing from the White House filed last night. Here's NPR's Stephen Fowler.
Who is in charge of the DOGE effort that's slashing its way through government contracts and directing agencies to fire employees? Legally, the White House says it's not Elon Musk. In a court filing this week, Musk is described as a, quote, senior advisor to the president and is neither an employee or the administrator in charge of the United States DOGE Service Office. That revelation comes in a lawsuit that alleges Musk's role in the federal government is illegal and has enough power it should require Senate confirmation. That filing does not answer who's actually in charge. Stephen Fowler, NPR News, Atlanta.
In Gaza, Hamas says it will hand over the bodies of 4 Israeli hostages on Thursday.
Hamas is expected to give Israel 4 more hostages' bodies. After that, 59 hostages will remain in Gaza, nearly half of them confirmed dead. In return, Israel says it's allowing mobile homes into Gaza for those whose homes were destroyed, plus heavy machinery to retrieve bodies buried under rubble. Daniel Estrin, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
This is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Local colleges are grappling with a new policy directive issued by the U.S. Department of Education over the long weekend, telling them to eliminate all race-conscious policies. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports the surprise directive goes well beyond the Supreme Court's ban on race-conscious admissions.
The directive says colleges have to eliminate racial considerations in things like hiring, financial aid, and housing. It would even put a stop to commencement celebrations held by racial affinity groups.
Chambers isn't going too far. He's becoming a special advisor to Asbury, and he's also keeping his Mercedes-Benz of Boston dealership that's located in Salem and Somerville. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Eastern Brownie, I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined on Zoom by John King. He is Chief National Correspondent, and he just landed in Denver and ran to a quiet spot. Typical John King. We love you for that, John. Good to see you.
Quiet-ish, I hope.
Okay. It's good enough. Thank you, John.
So John King, let's start with President Trump. Of course, we always start with President Trump. It seems. What do you what is the reaction to the quote that he just talked about, that he shared on Truth Social, that he who saves his country does not violate any law? Some people attribute it to Napoleon Bonaparte. Others say that's not true, but it is often attributed to him nonetheless.
However you want to attribute it or interpret it, it tells you that he believes that if he's in charge, he can do no wrong. And there are a lot of people who would say that's pretty dangerous. There are a lot of people obviously concerned. We talked about this last week, and think of how many things have happened since last Tuesday about, the American people, especially his voters, do want Washington shaken up. But do they want it shaken up in such a way that people aren't given due process, people aren't given due notice? That Elon Musk is getting access or trying to get access to taxpayer information and Social Security information. But he clearly thinks that he is above the law. And you know what? He's emboldened himself internally, and people around him are emboldened by his success in, having all the investigations thrown out because he won the election. So we are in, there are some people who say it's a constitutional crisis. There are other people, Jim and Marjorie, who say we got to wait to see what happens. He's lost some rounds in the court. He says he will respect the courts for now. So I think we're building toward a giant constitutional question, and it is clear what he thinks, that a president has almost absolute power. If you read the Constitution, and if you talk to Democrats in Congress, and most Republicans will only say this privately, they believe, we have 3 branches for a reason, but Donald Trump doesn't see it that way.
Well, the other thing I wonder about, too, since he's been granted immunity for his official duties as President of the United States from the Supreme Court, I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but it does seem that gives you a wide swath. I mean, that you can do a lot of illegal things which you can't be prosecuted for while doing them as president because of that immunity.
I would set the word illegal aside. I think he can do, I'm not saying, people won't say that some of this is illegal, but I think he thinks he can test the limits of the system, that he can try anything. And again, that's actually part of their strategy. People say, why is he doing all of this at once? Why is it such a cloud of dust? Flood the zone, as Steve Bannon would say. They anticipate they're going to lose some of these, or at least it's going to take, maybe months or years to appeal things up through the courts. Maybe ask Republicans in Congress to try to change the laws if they lose some of these rounds. But imagine if you have 50 challenges, 25 challenges in the courts, and you win 6 or 8 of them. In their view, they're advancing the ball toward a stronger presidency. And as Trump critics would say, his effort at what many of them see as vindictive and retribution.
Talking to John King, whose luggage was just stolen while he's on the air with us, probably. When you speak about the rule of law and his position about it, that he decides with the rule of law, this situation with Eric Adams, where Beauvais, then the acting attorney general, and his being Trump's former lawyer, says to the U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, let's dismiss these charges. not because we found that they are meritless, but because he's got to run for re-election and cooperate with the president on mass deportation. And then the courage of these 7 employees at the U.S. attorneys who stood up to Trump and Beauvais, and the line that we've quoted twice today, John, I want to read again. A deputy U.S. attorney in that office, Hagan Scotton, who refused to file the motion to dismiss the case. If no lawyer within earshot of the president is willing to give him that advice, then I expect you will eventually find someone who is enough of a fool or enough of a coward to file your motion, but it was never going to be me. Some of the commentary this weekend, John, said that unlike other extra legal things that the Trump administration has done, this one might have some impact and staying power because of who defied him. Do you subscribe to that notion?
I do think, especially, Jim, if there's a paper trail, right? Is there any paper trail from the Justice Department or from the White House that actually equates it to a quid pro quo, essentially, as opposed to we've looked at the charges and we disagree with the Biden Justice Department? There's one thing, so I do think, and it's not just, that I think is going to be a central case because it involves alleged public corruption by the mayor of New York City and now the cooperation with the Trump people. It sure looks, right? If your eyes don't lie, it sure looks like it was a deal. Now, the people involved say it was not, so we'll watch it play out. But you have those resignations at the Justice Department. You have other resignations at the Social Security Administration, at the Internal Revenue Service. You're seeing resignations across the government of people who say, we will not do that. That's what happened to Richard Nixon in Watergate, remember? On a much smaller, we have seen just in the first month of the Trump administration, we're not even at the month mark yet, more resignations than you saw during the Watergate crisis. Now, they would, again, the Trump people would say, well, they're not crimes of that level. They would argue they're not crimes at all. But I think you do have a lot of cases where you have people now who are going to get called into court who are going to ask why and what documentation do you have. It was interesting, though, if you look at the hearing yesterday, Judge Chutkan in Washington, federal judge who is no fan of Trump, was very tough on January 6 cases. She told this Democratic attorneys generals who came in, you can't just cite media reports about the damages it's going to cause. You need to prove damage to me. So I do think that, some of this is going to take a while. Trump's going to do things. People are going to test it. But until you can prove, here's what happened when they did it, here's the damage to people, or here's the injustice to an employee, you're going to have to document it and go through the courts. And I think, look, we're going to be at this for weeks and months. But the Adams case, I think, is going to become central. And Marjorie, when I mentioned the word constitutional crisis, this could cause a state constitutional crisis in New York, in the sense that Governor Hochul is now debating whether she should exercise power she has to remove the mayor. You know where that's going to end up. If that happens, it's going to end up in court.
Yeah, and she reversed herself quickly before the election about the congestion pricing in New York. So we'll see if it's back now, apparently, but if she stands up more. But, when you mentioned Watergate, I remember being a kid and the Saturday Night Massacre. Those were all the headlines. And it was Archibald Cox, the prosecutor, and Elliot Richardson from Massachusetts, because Cox would not do what Nixon wanted him to do. But that was like a massive story. And I think now this is just one more story of people standing up that will be repeated over and over again or kind of lost in the shuffle.
Well, context is hard to come by because there's so much of it, right? So right. Which one of these things that people think are, extraordinary, over the line, across the line, some people say across the law, breaking the law, and I'll leave the judgment to people smarter than I, but which one do you decide to focus on, or which one gets a big test in court first? I would say that, the one distinction, the one difference so far anyway, is that obviously the people who resigned during Watergate were people who had been appointed by President Nixon. The people who are leaving here, the people here are mostly people that Trump will call the deep state. Trump will say they're the problem. That's why they're quitting. They won't carry out the will of the American people. That is what he's going to say. I'm not saying that's what it is, but that's what they are going to say. And so again, until you can actually litigate it and take it through the courts, but that's how he keeps the support of his base. The reason I'm here in Denver, we're going to one of the most competitive congressional districts in the country in a few minutes. It's about an hour from here. And it was won by a Republican, narrowly won by Trump. It was narrowly won by a Democrat in 2020 and 2022, and narrowly won by Biden in 2020. The district didn't exist with those lines. That's what we're here to talk to. We're here to talk to Trump voters, to talk about, are you all on board for this? Are you 100% on board? Are you seeing anything, whether it's the tariffs and economic policy or whether it's this exercise of presidential power? There's so much of it that one of my big questions to these voters is how much are they actually digesting here? We're out in Colorado or in the West. We're not sitting in Washington, D.C., where people are, it's like being pummeled. You're like a boxing, punching bag in Washington. There's one of these every 5 minutes. I'm really interested in how it's being processed out here in the country.
By the way, can I just respond? I know you were saying what the Trump people will say, not what you say. These deep state allegations, which they will make, Marjorie made the point repeatedly this morning, is that the woman who ran the U.S. Attorney's Office belongs to the Federalist Society, clerk for maybe the most conservative justice of our lifetime, or one of them, Antonin Scalia, and the number 2 guy who had that brilliant quote, Hagan Scotton, clerk for Kavanaugh and Roberts.
And is a decorated Iraq War veteran.
Yeah, you make a very critical point here, Jim, because they call themselves constitutional conservatives.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is not a constitutional conservative. He's not constitutional and he's not conservative. And yet he has done their business. The Federal Society is the one that gave him the list for the judges in the first term, all the way up to Supreme Court. So they have a transactional relationship with Donald Trump that they have benefited enormously from. But he is not one of them. He does not follow what they would say are their principles. I know there are lawyers out there listening or other, people out there who might disagree with the Federalist Society. I'm not trying to stir that debate. What I'm saying is, that they have been incredibly influential in the first Trump administration. And now you see it's their rank and file. It's not their leadership, right? Those people are senior people. You're mentioning people with serious legal credentials saying, I can't do this. It just does not match up. I can't look myself in the mirror if I do this. The question is, does it get any higher? And again, I'll raise the question that I raise every Tuesday. Will any elected Republicans beyond the likely suspects of Mitch McConnell, occasionally Lisa Murkowski, will any of them say enough and stand up? Do not hold your breath.
Well, I was all excited about the fact that they were conservatives and sandstones from the Federal Society until I remembered that the people that testified against Donald Trump in the January 6th hearings were people that were closest to him. They were Trump acolytes, and they testified against him, and it didn't matter to the people that were supporting the president. So you do know. I mean, that is one of the questions I always have. Does nothing matter?
Well, that's John's question, too, to the reply. Hey, John, one more thing. I know you're not a lawyer, and even though I am sort of, I don't know the answer, too. I think it's tomorrow, but sometime soon, the judge will have to decide the motion from the prosecutors to dismiss the case against Adams in New York City. My understanding is a federal judge has no power to reject a prosecutor's request that an indictment be withdrawn or whatever. We're going to have Nancy Gertner, former federal judge, with us later in the week. But I'll tell you, it seems to me if this judge decided, for whatever reason, I'm willing to be reversed to take a stand here, that might make this issue even more ripe for center stage in this Trump versus his resistance movement. Don't you think?
I think you raise a question, Jim, whether it's this judge or who is it going to be? Who is it who is going to say, all right, he, in my view, has gone outside the law, outside his rights, outside his authority, outside his constitutional power. So if he can do it, maybe I don't have that standing, but I'm going to do it just to advance this fight, just to keep this fight going, right? If the judge says, I have no power and I dismiss it, then people can scream about it, but it's not still an active legal case. So I think you make a key point about, I just said, don't hold your breath for people in Congress. Do some of these judges or somebody along the way, the state attorneys generals are going to do it, Democratic governors are going to do it. But where else is there someone at some stage who's going to decide, I need to find a way to escalate this fight or to bring a sharp spotlight on this fight? I don't even know quite the way to articulate, but to make it the fight as opposed to all of these dust clouds around us of things they're doing.
We should add just one more thing to this, which we did mention in the 11 o'clock hour. In addition to the courage of these 7 employees, the U.S. attorneys, 4 deputy mayors out of 8 working for Adams told him on Friday they're quitting, which is another pretty courageous act. May not affect the big picture, but in terms of his ability to govern the biggest city in America, it may have a huge impact. So we'll see.
Yeah, he has this Trumpian ability to immediately turn on the people who are very loyal to him and say it's them, not me. Adams is I think he's read the playbook.
So we were talking earlier about how weird it is that the United States of America and Russia are together negotiating what happens to Ukraine, and the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, is not there. One of our frequent guests, Michael Curry, has a great line that if you're not on the table, you're on the menu, and it would seem particularly apropos. This seems crazy. It's like going back after World War I and drawing lines about the Ottoman Empire and stuff like that didn't work too well.
This one has so many levels. You could peel this onion for hours in the sense that, number one, it's a negotiation, And look, I think everybody wants an end to the Ukraine war, but how do you get there is the thing. And so the Trump team, on the way into the negotiations, gave Putin concessions without getting anything in return, saying that it was, unlikely, unwieldy, unexpected, no way that Ukraine would get all its land back, that they just had to deal with the fact that they weren't going to get everything back, that wasn't going to happen. Trump has said up front, without getting anything from Putin, who continues to attack Ukraine even as the negotiations were going on, about, they say NATO cannot, that Ukraine can never be in NATO. And so the Trump conceded major principal points before the negotiations even started. So, and you're right, Zelensky's not at the table, and the Europeans now are in a circular, like, what do we do meeting here. But again, back to the point about this is not Ronald Reagan or George W. Bush's or George H.W. Bush's Republican Party anymore. This is not standing up to Putin. This is starting negotiations by making concessions at the beginning to Putin. And as many people say, add that, the Trump team sits down with Putin, add that to the I want Greenland, I want the Panama Canal. And if you are Xi Jinping, you're thinking, oh, then I can take Taiwan because they say Putin can take land. They want to take land. Why can't I?
We're talking to John King. When you were talking before about, when will the Collinses, when will the Murkowskis, when will a rank-and-file Republican stand up? I'm thinking back to what you said earlier in this interview. It's not just the Democrats who haven't quite figured out, even though some, including people from our state, are fighting like hell, what the strategy is. Our European allies don't seem to know what the strategy is. I don't know if there is one, even though they're unhappy. Justin Trudeau, the outgoing prime minister, doesn't seem to know what the strategy is. Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, she did make a joke about the Gulf of Mexico or whatever the hell she did there. But it is amazing that with the exception of the courts, I'm thinking as I'm speaking, everybody is able to step up to say how horrible some of Trump's actions are, but nobody is zeroed on other than filing lawsuits on a way to bring it to an end or bring anything to an end.
Exactly. And so the first reaction of many, especially the global leaders, is he's just going to be a bully. He's going to say he wants X, but he really just wants us to make a concession on Y. That's what they think. But again, they say that's what they think. They don't really know because they see all this going on. And I think one of the big questions for them is, well, that's how he did it in term one. He bullied us. He said he was going to impose things, but then we negotiated and we worked most of this stuff out. That's the way it went the first time. I think one of the questions we're beginning to get an answer to is how different is the second time? How emboldened does he feel? How the fact that he's not surrounded by anybody like a Rex Tillerson or a John Kelly telling him, sir, there are guardrails here. You can't do this. Those people don't exist anymore. And so this is Trump being Trump. And from his vice president to the people around him. And, I would say, sadly, I'm not my job to say who's right or wrong. But we're supposed to have debates about big things like this. And the fact that his party is essentially mute on these giant constitutional questions, these giant America role in the world questions that, right now from his own party, he gets a free pass. And you're right. The world is scratching its head trying to figure out where are we going.
Hey, John, you just got off a plane in Denver. As I'm talking to you, I'm watching CNN where a survivor of the crash in Toronto is quoted as saying, "We were upside down hanging like bats." We know what happened a few weeks ago. It was only a few weeks ago in Washington. Do you have any trepidation? I mean, you fly like crazy. Do you have any trepidation about flying?
I do not. In the 1988 campaign, the Dukakis campaign plane, we literally would watch them use duct tape to hold it together sometimes. And it's a long story. I'll tell you sometime over a beer. I'm not going to tell the people on the radio about why we kept that plane. It had nothing to do with flying and nothing to do with Governor Dukakis. But I decided then that I'm going to step in front of a bus or walk into an open manhole cover or something. But I'm not going down on a plane, so I don't worry about planes. If I survive that, it's not going to be a plane that gets me.
Well, that's one of us, I should say. We're talking to John King.
I hope I'm not putting you on the spot here, but you know that the Associated Press has been banished from campaign planes and the White House, the Oval Office rather, because they refused to, and they're an international organization, the Associated Press, they refused to call the Gulf.
He used to work for the Associated Press when he
was a cover
young
reporter.
Boy, yes.
And I just bemoan the fact that they're losing so many reporters. We're down to 6 covering the New England states, not Connecticut. They don't cover Connecticut. But anyway, is there some talk? I mean, is everybody else just going to let them not be there? I mean, there's some thinking that if everybody else from the legitimate news organizations left, then we'd have no one else but One News America, whatever that station is. That's sort of a PR operation for Trump. But what about that, John?
Creates a giant dilemma for the business because he's doing so many consequential things. You have to cover him, and yet he's being authoritarian, and he's throwing tradition and respect for the news organizations out the window. That's my DNA. That's where I got my start. I bleed the AP, and I will always bleed the AP. I was off over the holiday weekend. I know there were some conversations in Washington. I need to learn more about them, about news organizations coming together to try to find some ways, number one, to stand up for the AP's access, and number two, to stand up to Trump and his White House team about, you don't tell us how we cover the news. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. That is not how it works. It's never worked that way. If you want to expand the briefing room to let some of your mega organizations in, fine, that's your right. You won the presidency, you live in the building, but you don't set the rules for us. That's not how it works. So I do hope there's a stronger response. There have been a lot of statements, but there needs to be a stronger, more unified response. Unfortunately, our business is fractured so much that that's hard to bring together.
Yeah.
You think Fox News is going to stand up with the AP on access to the White House? I hope they would, because, we stood at CNN back in the day. There were Democratic administrations who were trying to punish Fox News, not at this scale back in the day, and we stood with them. We stood with them back in the days when I was covering the White House. That was a long time ago. So I would hope that there are serious conversations about trying to find a way to push this point, because it's reprehensible. And to your point about New England and the cutbacks, look, I understand the pressures on the business. My company now is going through, every media company is going through change and evolution and revolution and everything else. But 10 Doran Street in Providence, Rhode Island is where this kid got his start, first as an intern, and then my first job. Buddy Cianci City Hall was right across the street. And the fact that there's no AP bureau in Providence, Rhode Island just breaks my heart. It just breaks my heart.
John King, I had Buddy Cianci's wife on television with me a couple of years ago, right after The Prince of Providence was produced, at brilliant play at the Trinity Playhouse. And I have to say, one of the most impressive adults I have ever met, and no BS people I've ever met in my life. By the way, you mentioned a long time ago when Fox News, you weren't listening because you just got off the plane, but I mentioned 20 minutes ago, there's a much more recent example when Obama himself barred Fox News from an interview with, who's the guy we've had on the show repeatedly? Ken Feinberg, the guy who does all those compensation things. And CBS, NBC, ABC, and CNN refused to cover Obama events unless they were let back in. And to the credit of all four of those organizations, Obama relented and allowed Fox News in. So
there needs to be on some issues. I know we're all competitors. On some issues, if we don't stand on the principle of the First Amendment and access and free speech and the ability to cover the President of the United States and the dog catcher in some small county somewhere. This is not about Trump. For people who say, they're just going after Trump. This is about a principle that is a bedrock, again, of our constitutional republic. And if we don't fight for it, we will suffer for it.
John, last minute, let's start where we began, you in Denver. I'm not talking about polling. I'm talking about your brilliant interviews in all over the map, following up with Trump, people who voted for Trump. Is there one issue, I know it's anecdotal, but is there one issue where he seems to be the most vulnerable with those who voted for him on November 5th, or is it still too early?
I would say it's too early. The thing that came up in some of the prior conversations, and one of the guys we're going to see out here is a rancher, the tariffs have come up from a lot of the small business people and the farmers and ranchers who have to deal with international markets. Tariffs were coming up in the rearview mirror. Since the last time I was out talking to voters, we've had a lot of this, Elon Musk going into agencies and trying to get access to stuff. One of the four voters we're going to sit down with out here has raised the Musk question. I want to ask some of the others about it. They like that he's shaking up Washington, beginning to pick up some little bit, I'm not going to call it even grumbling, but some concerns about how he's doing it.
Okay. John, we really appreciate your generosity. I know it's a really tight day.
I have, Jim, I just want to say I have Allentown Alley with me on this trip, who is just back from the parade in Philadelphia.
No, is that true?
Oh, yeah. She somehow managed, she's in charge now, so she got to take the day off to be at the parade.
Can you tell Allentown Alley for me? I grew up on the 19th floor of an apartment building about 100 feet away from the art museum where the celebration was, so she walked right past the place where I spent my youth, as they say.
There you go.
Send her my best.
Where they have the Rocky statue,
Rocky
right?
statue,
The Rocky
exactly.
statue's
Yeah.
right there. She was
Exactly.
inspired.
Say hi to her for us. Good to see you, John. Take care.
I sure will. Thank
Thank
you.
you very much, John
Bye,
King.
John.
Great to talk to you. We've been speaking with John King, Chief National Correspondent at CNN, and he's out doing what I love, what he does. These sit-downs with extensive interviews with people on one side of the spectrum, the other side of the spectrum.
You get so much better insight into what people think than just in polling.
And I'm sure it's going to be on very soon, his reports from out there in Colorado. Up next, we're going to open the lines to ask you about the conversational phrases that drive you batty. When somebody in Boston says, "Have a nice day," how often do you think they mean it genuinely? Or is it like an insult, a thinly veiled threat? There was a great piece about this in the Boston Globe today. We stole it from there. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH.
A Syrian soccer player became...
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Atlantic Design Center by Eldridge Lumber and Hardware, committed to helping you achieve your vision for a new kitchen or bathroom and guiding you from design to completion with showrooms in York and Portland, Maine. AtlanticDesignCTR.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're both excited. Nikki Glaser is a brilliant comedian who not enough people had heard of until she did the Brady Roast. She had an HBO special, which was fabulous. And then, of course, she hosted the Golden Globes, where I also thought she was terrific. She's at the Wilbur this weekend, and we'll call into our show tomorrow at noon. We are really, at the Wang, thank you. We are really excited about speaking to her. For the rest of the show, we're opening the lines to get your thoughts on the digs, I guess you can call them, that masquerade as pleasantries, like, have a nice day. Phrases that are seemingly polite, but risk revealing an undertone of seething resentment. This topic comes to us from an opinion piece in the Globe by, is it Brian Watman, I think his name is? Who writes, "I've been guilty when running late for a meeting, but overcome with the need for a mid-morning caffeine jolt of saying it matter-of-factly to a barista." So the lines are open, 877-301-897. Do you revel in these little jabs, or are we just so suspicious of each other these days that a genuine offer of pleasantry, if it is genuine, can be interpreted as a slight? Is "have a nice day" just the New England equivalent of what our former colleague Michael Graham, he's from South Carolina, right?
Yes.
Michael's from South Carolina.
Yes.
Michael always used to say when he meant the opposite, "bless your heart," and you knew that he didn't mean it. And what other jabs or expressions just really put you over the edge? 877-301-897. My favorite piece, a part of this piece in the Globe by this Watman guy, about 20 years ago, a therapist friend told me that he confirmed a patient's oppositional defiance diagnosis at the end of a session when he innocently said, "have a good day," and the client angrily responded, "don't tell me what to do."
That's a good one. That's a great one.
That is a great line.
But, you know, I have said, have a nice day in a very sarcastic way. I did it when I was young, waiting tables. You know, if people gave me
they screwed you on a tip?
Yeah, or they just gave me a hard time because, you know, the madder they got, the more saccharine I became. And then it was, you know, "have a nice day," as they less said very sarcastically. Or if you get into a dispute over a parking space or something like that, you know, where someone does a really obnoxious thing and you just, rather than engaging in the screaming and yelling, you just say, "have a nice day." So I've
Do you
done
ever
that.
mean it?
Yeah. Well, you know, he ends with a real tearjerker of a
What's
little
that?
anecdote. Well, and when he talked about the next door neighbor's little girl said it to him so sweetly as he was leaving his house one morning. She saw him leaving and she said, "have a nice day, Mr. Watman." And then he thought that was a sweet little kind gesture that she was extending. So it can go either way. But he also talks about these other annoying variation things besides "bless your heart" and "have a nice day." Have a good one. Enjoy your day. Take it easy. What do you think of those?
I say take care to a lot of people, and
Take
now
care?
I feel self-conscious about that too.
Yeah.
I think I got screwed by Best Buy yesterday.
You did?
And I did, yeah. I was really angry, and this manager doubly screwed me. And I did say to him, have a nice day. So I can't think of when I say it that I actually mean it. But I do say take care to everybody. Is that a problem, or is that okay?
Well, I guess it depends how you're using it. I mean, you could use it sarcastically in the right situation. If you really were ticked off at somebody, and instead of like yelling at them, you just sort of said it.
You say like take care a-hole. That's an indication that you don't mean it as a pleasantry. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. We have a lot of people. Two phrases that drive me nuts. It is what it is.
Oh,
we have that listed. We have that in our sound thing, don't we?
We have. It is what it is. Exactly.
Yeah, it is what it is.
But,
whatever. It is what it is. It may be, but you have to say it. And then no problem, instead of the more gracious, you're welcome. This one suggests the person would only have done the kindness because it wasn't any trouble. That's from Kathy in Rhode Island.
877-301-897. I guess we're doing two things. One, what do you think about this have a good day thing? And do you ever mean it in the spirit of the words, have a good day? And secondly, I guess this is evolved in, if there are other expressions that really put you over the edge, feel free to share. Who wrote this good for you thing? Is that you? Zoe said, my favorite is good for you. I've said it genuinely and people are like, that's not very nice, thinking I meant it sarcastically. Do you ever say good for you? And good for you is like, I think is really a low blow kind of thing, even if Zoe doesn't mean it.
Unless you mean it sincerely.
Well, exactly.
That's
but
a
who
good
means
one.
it sincerely?
Well, every once in a while you might mean it sincerely. Do you want to play Willy Wonka?
Sure.
Here's a little sound to get Brian Watman riled up, and he's the writer of this piece in the Globe complaining about Don't Tell Me to Have a Nice Day. This is from Gene Wilder in the classic Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Good day, sir. You're a crook. You're a cheat and a swindler. That's what you are. How can you do a thing like this? Build up a little boy's hopes and then smash all his dreams to pieces. You're an inhuman monster. I said good day.
Exactly. Gene Wilder, did you think of him this weekend? Gilda Radner
I
was
did
his wife,
on Saturday
right?
Night Live. Yeah, the special was really
Died
good.
in her 30s.
Multiple specials. Ovarian cancer, wasn't it?
She was just spectacular. In any case, 877-301-8970. We're talking about have a good day, but we're also really talking about expressions that you use that are really not intended to be something nice, even though the words suggest that they are.
Here's a good one. Isn't that special?
No, that's a good.
From Dana Carvey, the church lady.
But that is never a positive thing. Does anybody ever say, isn't that special?
Yeah, you might say it in a nice way. Someone's showing you something they bought at the store.
Oh, I don't think
piece
so.
Of jewelry.
When have you
or
ever done that?
I don't know. I haven't done it. But,
okay.
But Dana Carvey did it all the time.
He did.
Yes.
Alan, was Dana Carvey there? I don't think so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I don't remember seeing him either.
Nor Bill Hader. No one knows why. Al on the road, you are first on Boston Public Radio. Have a good day, Al. Hi.
Yeah, thanks, Jim.
My pleasure.
With all due respect.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah.
Now, Al, here's a question. I know your answer. No one who's ever said that ever has meant with any respect for the person to whom they're saying it, correct?
I don't think so, yeah. I've never said it meaning it.
Yeah. That's a good point.
Al, that's an excellent
due
one.
respect.
Thank you.
Means you don't respect them at all. Absolutely.
Al, thank you very much.
877-301-8970 is the number. This is another texter and says, I'm Gen X. We're not subtle at all. We just say what we mean. Do you find that true among your Gen X associates?
You talking to me?
Yes.
No. Now, let me just say, the other thing, doesn't really fall into the category, but we're going far afield here. Why not? How do you feel when someone says, let me be honest with you? What is the message
there? That implies
there?
that mostly they're dishonest.
Exactly.
They're making an exception, which means that they're probably dishonest all the time. No offense is the most offensive thing imaginable, says Aiden, our staffer.
No, before you say the most offensive thing imaginable. That's how people use it.
That's right.
Thank you.
No offense. That's right.
I have no idea what that is either.
David in Rhode Island, thank you for calling.
Hi, David. Welcome.
This is Nikki.
Hey, David, you called us. You know what I mean?
Hi, David. You there?
Hi, David. Well, that went well. David, we'll put him on hold. And it's amazing to me that someone actually calls us.
Well, they might have.
And then wanders off into Never Land.
Well, okay. Peggy in Fall River, thank you for calling.
Hey, Peggy.
Hi.
Jim and Marjorie,
nervous.
whoever we are.
I went to school. Yes, I went to school with you.
No.
Marjorie.
You did? At Durfee?
Morton Junior High.
Morton Junior High. Oh, my gosh.
What was she like back then, Peggy?
Let me tell you, I'm from another country.
Yeah.
And when I went to Morton Junior High, I looked up to Marjorie. She was the head cheerleader.
She wasn't pregnant?
No. She was like the nicest
no,
person.
Please.
Oh, Peggy, thank you.
Why? Wait.
Do you know who I am?
Do you know who she is?
I'm not. Do you have black hair and you're about 5'2"? What's your last?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I do know who you are.
Okay.
Botello.
Yeah,
well,
Botello.
We still go to the
Okay.
Reunions.
Okay.
Exactly.
Enough of this.
And
Peggy,
you have
let's.
the best hair.
Okay,
I
whatever.
don't think
Okay,
she
fine.
could say a nasty thing
Peggy,
about anybody.
okay, good.
Peggy,
Why did you-
Jesus,
is that
that's
what you
very
looked up
nice
to her?
of you.
She says nasty things to me every day.
No. I mean,
She was different
the
then?
nicest person.
Okay, enough of
Okay.
that.
Well, that's very nice of you to
That's all.
say, Peggy.
Okay.
So, what do you think about
Nice
this?
talking to you.
Oh, that's all? That's all?
No,
Oh, okay.
no, she's not done.
You're gonna
She's
say
just saying
what-
nice talking to you.
Oh, nice talking to you.
Because
Have a good day, Peggy.
You
Go
can't
ahead.
say anything bad.
No,
Bye-bye.
not her. So what are you
Wow.
calling to say?
Peggy, thank you very much. You've made my
Maybe
day.
she said it already. It was nice talking to you, the thing you were
I
going to
think
say?
that was it.
Peggy,
yeah.
that was an excellent call.
That was an excellent call.
Well, did she mean nice talking to you, or she
I think
didn't
so.
mean it?
I think she did mean
She was
nice
pretty
talking to me.
excited.
Yeah, I know. I remember her from junior high school. And
You
from
were
my
the lead cheerleader in
reunions.
junior high
I was.
and high school?
I was cutting a wide swath there, Jim.
That's
at
pretty
my-
incredible.
My junior high
Did
school.
you do
that's right.
tumbles and all that sort of stuff?
Did handsprings.
You
yeah,
did not.
I did.
Could you do one?
It's a wonder I didn't kill myself.
Could you
not
do
very.
one?
I was not very good at it. No, I was not very good at it. I was not very.
Peggy looked up
I was
to you.
not
Do
a
you know that?
gymnast. David in Rhode Island. Thank
Let's
you for
talk
calling.
about Peggy for a minute. What did you think of Peggy?
I thought she was great.
You remembered who
Yes,
exactly
I do.
she
yes,
was.
I think she goes to our reunions.
She does?
And I have almost a perfect attendance record at my reunions.
That's
I've missed
really
a few,
fabulous.
but they're every 5 years. Sometimes they're every 2 years.
I have a perfect attendance in mine, too. I've been to one. I don't intend to go to one.
We have a great class. We have a great
You do?
class. Yeah, we have a great class. We have like hundreds of people that show up, and
That's
everybody
very nice.
dances, and it's fun.
What else are they going to do?
David from Rhode
Fall
Island.
River.
Thank you for calling.
Hi, David. What's up?
Well, hi. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
This is actually a really bad habit that, I encounter at the dentist's office and the doctor's offices around Boston, and it goes like this. I'll have you put on a hospital drawing. I'll have you spit. I'll have you do this or that, as though they are like the boss person.
Oh.
Ooh.
And, yeah.
You've
I
got some
find that
problems.
very troubling.
You've got problems with authority, David, huh?
Yeah, I think authority's got problems with me.
Oh, I like your style there, David.
Okay, David.
David, thank you very much for your call there. Yeah.
Oh, this is a good one. I've done this. I say you're welcome when I don't get a thank you.
Oh, I do that too.
Yeah.
But that's so unsophisticated. I mean,
It's very-
we should both that texter
We
and
should
I
control
should do a
ourselves.
little bit. No, you should do better than that.
You should do better than that. What
Go
should
for
you do?
the gold. You don't. You should-
Oh, what do you do?
Can we tell you something? How satisfying? Let's just talk for a second. When you don't beat around the bush, as that saying goes, and do something like I did with a guy who screwed me at Best Buy yesterday. Have a good day.
You want to get a refund, Jim? Is that why you're talking about this?
Maybe I was. I was 2 days late, but not that it was upsetting me. In the box,
How much
unopened.
did you spend?
No, I'm not going to go into it.
What'd you buy?
A lot. Okay, so
A TV? New
what is-
TV?
maybe I can't remember.
Ooh.
Maybe I did. What is my point?
How do you like the TV?
I didn't say I had a TV. Nice try there, Marjorie. Very good line of questioning.
Okay.
Kathleen in Naples, Florida. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Excellent.
This is not actually something you would use to greet or say goodbye to someone.
Yeah.
But whenever I hear anyone use the phrase hit the ground running, it drives me insane.
No, I don't like it either.
Because I am a runner. And if you hit the ground running, you're going to break your leg.
That is an
And
excellent.
it's just ridiculous.
Well, what would you say instead? If the import of what you wanted to convey was that they should, you'll excuse the expression, hit the ground running, or really be ready to go right away, what would you say? You should be ready to go right away?
Yeah, they should just explain how they're going to be ready to start right away.
Kathleen, excellent point. Thank you. This is Mitch in New Bedford. You see this? When
Yes.
people say, which I really hate, we just have to agree to disagree. To quote Homer Simpson, I don't agree with that. That is, why aren't people more direct? I don't get it.
I don't know. I think that's if you're having a big fight with somebody and you kind of are sick of fighting, you want to throw in the towel. I think that's
Okay,
one I've
fine.
said it before.
Yeah.
Here's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Not a phrase, but I cannot stand it when people call me chief or boss. Were I your boss, I would be letting you go.
Well, there is a person we had on our show, I'm not going to say who it was, so don't ask.
Chief?
About 3 or 4 months ago,
Called you
who
Chief?
I've known for only 30 years. He calls me buddy. And he doesn't call me buddy because he likes the expression buddy. He calls me buddy because he has no idea what my name is. So, none. So,
How about this one?
What?
Have the day you deserve.
Wow. Well, that is...
What does that mean?
I think it's vicious, but it's intended to not be. That's a perfect example of have a good day kind of thing. You're attempting to brutalize somebody with words that are unbrutal on their face.
My husband's favorite is, if you say so, and I find it very annoying.
Well, that is really annoying. I mean, yeah. Does anyone ever mean that positively either?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, fine.
I don't think so.
Shannon in Somerville, you're on Boston Public Radio. We're talking about have a good day, which was the kickoff of this conversation, and other expressions that don't really mean the pleasantry they suggest they do. Hi.
Hi, I wanted to address the no problem versus you're welcome that was brought up earlier.
Please.
I just think no problem is a little bit more casual. I don't think anyone is trying to imply that there would be a problem. I think it's fine. I think it's just language evolving.
Okay, Shannon, how do you feel about no worries?
I feel like no worries is fine.
Okay.
More casual, friendly.
Yeah. Why is that getting my
Why
nerves
is it more... me too. Why is it more casual, Shannon?
Because we're crabby.
Why is it more casual?
It just sounds more casual to me. I also think the no problem versus you're welcome is like a generational
I think
thing.
it is too.
Yeah. You know, it's a funny thing
Shannon,
how...
thanks for your 2 cents. We
you know
appreciate
how
it.
when you're driving, and say you're driving down a two-way street that really should be a one-way street, and someone lets you go by, and you wave to them, and they wave back. Doesn't that feel so good?
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Yeah.
I mean, and if they don't
Is that
wave,
if you wave with all 5 fingers or just one finger?
No, if you give them a sign, thank you. You give them a sign with your hand saying thank you, and they give you a sign back. It makes me feel so good. And I think if someone doesn't do it, I feel terrible.
Wow, that's really sad. Now let me say something else, if I may.
What?
I have to say, and I don't want to exaggerate, I have probably done thumbs up 3 times in my whole life, and I've been around a while. I didn't like it prior to Trump. I really don't like it during Trump.
Yeah.
But how do you feel about that?
Well, you get a million emojis with thumbs
I'm not
up,
talking about
don't
emoji. Emoji is even worse. I'm talking about in real life. How do you feel when you're talking to somebody and their response, exactly that. Exactly that. How do you feel about that?
I must admit I'm neutral on that
Okay.
one, Jim.
Very sorry to hear that.
I haven't encountered too many thumbs.
Who wrote this?
up.
I love thumbs up. You did it to me this morning.
I
This
did?
is no, not you, Zoe.
Oh.
I sent Zoe and you a note, and you responded, of course, 8 hours later. Zoe responded promptly, but she responded with the thumbs up. And I know Zoe well enough. She only responded the way to piss me off.
Yeah.
I know her. It isn't because you could have said okay, but
Yeah.
here's another one. Don't forget about PETA's campaign, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals campaign, to change a bunch of animal-related phrases. Beat a dead horse to feed a fed horse. I mean, really? Or kill 2 birds with 1 stone to feed 2 birds with 1 scone. I mean,
okay.
How does that convey
There was
the
a
message?
big story in the New York Times on Sunday talking about what happened to the anti-fur campaign. Now you see all these people wearing fur again. Remember, you used to be accosted by PETA members who would throw
Who wears
fake
fur?
blood at you?
Kanye's naked wife wore fur
She
to the
did.
Grammys.
She did. But
Who else wears fur? I
apparently
don't
a
see
lot
fur.
of people wearing fur again, Jim. You missed the style section story. I read it from
the
beginning
New York
to end. I
Times,
don't know
or
why
where
it's
was
back. It was the New York Times on
Really?
Sunday. Sheila from Rehoboth. What do you think, Sheila?
Hello, Sheila Rehoboth. Hi.
Hey, first-time caller. I'm
Wow,
calling,
thank
and
you.
yeah, thank you. I love you guys. Listen
Thank
to you daily.
You're terrific. Thank you.
My response is more in the bless your heart category.
Yeah.
When I'm dealing with someone that's being difficult, and I've worked with the public for years, they're unkind, they're rude, they're difficult, my response is usually, there we are then. And if you take the first letter of each word, there you go.
Oh, yeah, Margie, do not ask. Just look, and you'll know what it is.
I'm not going to say it.
Thank you for the
That's a
thing
good
there.
one, Sheila.
Sheila, that was great.
Oh, here's an anonymous texter
This
who
is
says,
really not
truly,
necessary.
I think it sounds so sanctimonious, not surprising, when Jim Browdy says, be well.
I do say be well. And can I tell you something? When I read that, 1, I feared you'd read it. And 2, when I even read it, I felt it was sanctimonious, and I say it. Be well is such a Brahmin-esque kind of be well kind of thing. Shut up. Exactly, including me.
Okay, Arlene in Plymouth, thank you for calling.
Hello, Arlene in Plymouth. What's up?
Hi, you know what I don't like? How are you?
What's the matter with that? Is that, oh my gosh, I say that a million times a day.
Yeah, because no one really cares how you are. Yeah,
They don't care.
Go ahead.
That's right. That's exactly right. And people call you and say, how are you? And then you say fine, and you go on. It's like an automatic thing. When people ask me how I am, I say to them, do you really want to know?
Wow, Jesus.
That's a good answer, Arlene. So how do you greet people if you don't say, how are you?
Hi, hello.
Oh, okay. Okay.
That's a little abrupt, don't you think, Arlene? I mean, it sort of doesn't ease you into the conversation. What?
How about hello, good to see you?
Oh.
That's a nice one.
Especially if you don't mean it. That's
nice
really good.
Nice to see you. Yeah, that's a good one.
Arlene, thank you. You know what the problem is? I don't know if you're aware of this. I am aware of this because a friend of mine pointed this out. I often say to the caller when I greet them, how are you? When I really don't want to know how they are because I want to get to the point.
That's right.
So maybe Arlene is on to something there.
Because you want to say with great sanctimony, be well. As soon as the call's over.
You say be well at the end of the call.
Listen to this one. I've seen the more recent have the day you deserve turn into have the day you voted for.
Oh, that's actually actually a good one.
Okay, I'm fine with pleasantries, but do not say have a good one. A good what? Does it take too much energy to add have a good day, evening, week, or catastrophe if you must? That's from Judith in Framingham.
By the way, I'm with Judith. Have a good one drives me nuts. Do you care about that? Apparently not.
No.
Hello?
I don't think that bothers me that much. Some of them do.
Well, let's hear.
No worries. I don't know why no worries.
No, you and I, but I think that woman, was it Shannon? Whoever said that, I think it's generational. I think it is generational. I like if I ask you, do you have any worries? It is fine to say no worries. But if I ask you, or if I say thank you very much for something, I expect someone to say, you're welcome.
That's right.
Something
That's right.
thereabouts.
Or I want the sign when we're on the 2-lane street. I land in New Hampshire. I don't know what to make of this. I say take care. I work with the dirty public. I never mean it.
Wow.
What do you make of that?
It's pretty intense.
I don't know.
I just realized when you say thank you to people, maybe this is the reason I have a problem with it. You know what they often do other than no worries? Marjorie, thumbs up. Really, don't do that. Really, don't do that. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the generic you. Cindy in Framingham, you're next on Boston Public Radio. We're sort of having a good day, about to have a good day. Hello there.
Hi there.
Hi.
I just wanted to tell you when, back in the 80s, when everybody was saying have a nice day, my husband got so sick of it, he would say, I have other plans.
That's a really good one. I'm going to use that. That is excellent. Tell your husband that's great. Cindy, thank you for the call. We appreciate it.
2 words I hate. Awesome.
I don't like awesome.
Is it run its course?
There's less awesome. There's less use of awesome than I think there was a couple of years ago. I think that's probably true. Yeah.
Yeah. People have all sorts of words that they can't. The same person can't stand the word underscore. You know what drives me crazy?
No, I don't.
Stakeholders.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I don't know why that drives me so crazy.
I'm upset about it too, Marjorie. We're on the same place.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Josh in Alba, what do you think, Josh?
Hey, Josh.
Hey, y'all. I don't like warm regards, kind regards for the super condescending. I can understand if you're getting it like first time meeting, if it's in a professional setting, but, it's like, oh, kind regards, warm regards, well, just tell me to F off.
Well, that's another approach.
Okay.
Josh, your connection is not great, so we got to let you go. Thank you for your contribution to the discussion.
Here's another one. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, there is nothing. I can't believe I didn't think of that. That makes my blood run cold. Is there anybody in the audience who likes someone saying to them, thank you for sharing? Anybody? Raise your hand and be embarrassed. But nobody. Thank you very much for your honesty, I think.
When commenting on an outfit or a piece of jewelry I'm wearing, I do not appreciate, quote, that's different, unquote.
That's a good one. That is a really... We can squeeze one. Jared smiled at that. He must like that one, too. He's probably uses it.
This one from a Gen Zoomer culture. When you apologize for something and the response is, you're fine.
Yeah, that's not... No, I don't think so.
Boy, we say a lot of it. We're driving each other crazy. There's no question about it.
You and I?
The world is driving each other crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
Kathleen,
one wrong word and it's all over.
You have 45 seconds. Take it away.
Thank you. Listen, I don't know, for some reason my pet peeve is basically when I ask a question or about anything and someone goes, well, basically, I'm like, so are we talking about something specific or are we talking about just something random? What kind of information are you giving
Kathleen,
me?
can I plead guilty? I use it, and I know when I use it how horrible it is. So I'm glad you outed me and all other basically employers. No, it's true. It's horrible. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
Do you say basically? I don't think so.
I don't know if I say that, but this is a good one from Aiden. Thank you, or from Zoe. Thank you for holding space.
What the hell does that mean?
People say that all the time.
What does that
Jim.
mean?
For holding space.
What, for being alive?
For this conversation or for this.
Oh.
Yes, thank you for holding space. Haven't you
Well,
ever
because
heard?
that's like the ultimate PC.
That's very PC.
Okay.
Okay, Jared.
Jared is probably preparing to tell us what phrases. Jared, you're not a thumbs up kind of guy. Is that correct? I hope. Is that true?
I don't do a lot of that, no.
Thank you.
No.
So is there a phrase?
How do you feel about holding space?
Yeah, I think I used that one the last time, actually, when we talked about this.
Oh,
but
really?
You know the one I can't stand?
No.
I don't know if you're encountering this. Every time I walk into a store now, welcome in, friend.
Oh, Jesus.
And it makes me feel like I'm in a Western because that's what they always say. Like, did I just roll up in my covered wagon with my pioneer family outside?
That's pretty
Welcome
good.
in, friend.
That's a good one.
Sure,
that's a good one.
That's the
We
one.
missed you, Jared. I'm glad you're back.
Thank you.
Were you on vacation or what were you doing?
I was on vacation. I
Good
was,
for you.
as they said where I was on the fun side of the wall.
You were. You did say. I didn't know what that meant, but I'm glad to
That's
hear
what they're
it.
saying in Mexico at the moment.
You were in Mexico?
I was in Mexico.
Oh, on the fun side of the wall. That is, now I get it. That's
Wait,
great.
Did people accost you and ask you ugly American questions?
I was asked a question every now and again, yeah.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
They're mad at us, right?
Yeah, nobody's really happy.
They were unhappy that he was holding the space. That's what they
That's
were,
right.
That's what they're upset about.
All right, what's
what
on
are
the
you
show?
doing on the show there?
So we're going to be talking with Amari Paris-Jeffries
Excellent.
about obviously this rollback of DEI-ish everything in Black History Month and what that means. We're going to be talking with Mikko Nissanen of Boston Ballet because his Swan Lake is about to open, so we'll talk about that beautiful ballet. And then Julia Swanson of the Art Walk Project has some very uplifting art for us to talk about today, including the Karita Kent mural on the gas tank. We'll do a deep dive about that.
Oh, God, is that still there?
Yeah, very much still there.
I wasn't sure if it was even still there. That's been there forever, right?
And it's glorious and makes people happy
Yeah,
even though
it
they're on
does.
the expressway.
Okay, Jared, thank you very much. Glad you're back.
I appreciate you.
Okay,
That's
get
the other
out.
one.
Get out. By the way, who just added this? This is the worst of them all. Who, you, Aiden? Oh, Hannah, deep dive. Deep dive. Thank you, Julio, whoever the hell you are.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Deep dive is
That's
hard.
a good
We're done,
one.
Marjorie.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you very much for listening to another edition of Boston Public Radio. Jared, great to see you again.
Good to
You can
see
keep
you,
up with us 24/7 by way of our podcast, or you can check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio. Tomorrow, we're going to be back here at the library with our national security expert, Juliette, Kayyem, comedian Nikki Glaser. She's not going to be here in person, but we're going to talk with her, and we're so excited. You may have seen her at the Golden Globes and at that Tom Brady.
We're talking to her live. She's just calling in. Yeah, she's
Yes.
out of town.
And we're going to have a panel with some of Boston's premier restaurateurs, Jodi Adams, Garrett Harker, Jimmy Liang, and the last iteration of our new segment, How Did You Two Know Each Other, with husband and wife duo, former Berkeley
What are you
president.
talking about? Last iteration. Next iteration.
Latest iteration.
Oh, latest.
Latest
I'm sorry.
iteration.
Not the last.
I said it
We
wrong.
like this.
It's our second iteration. Let's put it that way.
Thank you.
Of our
Third.
new segment is a third.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you two know each other? I guess I missed one of them.
The O'Briens,
Yeah, I wasn't here.
Myers and Chang.
Oh, okay.
And then you were
All
here.
right. Former Berkeley President Roger Brown and Bright Horizons executive Linda Mason, the two of them started Bright Horizons a million years ago.
She was chair of the Boston Foundation.
Yeah,
They've done
they went to
international
Africa
stuff.
together. They're really something.
We'll talk about it.
Okay, our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John the Claw Parker, our executive producer, Jane Bologna. Special thanks to our BPL staff, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Juan Jose Cadena, our host of the Newsfeed Cafe.
Public University.